Because you've got powerful legs. How did you get the physique? Was it gym or how did you get the physique?
I've always been...
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
I'm sure no one will mind.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump, you know what I'm saying?
Welcome, everybody, to the 581st edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse, a proud member of the Sports Social Network, and you can find us live at 8 o'clock in the UK, 3 o'clock Eastern Time in the US, 12 o'clock Pacific, and then we will get it uploaded. You'll be able to get us on Monday morning, wherever you find your podcasts at. I am your host, Matt DiGianardo. Happy to be here with you. Dez is with us as well. Andy will not be here. We send best wishes to his family. Just got a little health thing going on there. And hopefully we do see Rob later on today. Maybe Dom, who knows. But Dez and I are going to take it through. And man, what an interesting day yesterday turned out to be. On paper, it looked pretty terrible. But I'll tell you what, I ended up having a good time. Joe Joyce, Derek Chisora, what an interesting fight that was. It might be the first fight of the year candidate that ever appeared to be being fought in slow motion. And despite that slow motion, neither man seemed to be able to get out of the way of anything. Seemed to be a nip and tuck fight through about 7 rounds. And then Joyce caught Chisora good and his legs were gone. And he was just working the outside of the ring. Still 9th round, legs gone. Joyce working him over. Pop out of nowhere. Right hand sends Joe Joyce onto his butt. He gets up, and he still seems to be on better footing than Chisora. Fights through the rest of the round okay. And then somehow loses the 10th with Chisora picking his shots off. It just picking, single punches here and there, and Joyce's defense being so awful. Chisora winning by 2 cards of 96-94, one of 97-92, I believe. I think one of them must have had a couple even rounds, or they considered the 9th the knockdown negligible despite the rule change. What are you going to do? Judges do what they want. We all know that. But Tez, this is kind of, I don't know if it's a British classic, but this is a damn decently entertaining fight, considering what we thought going in.
Yeah, I mean, the boxing snobbing me, I didn't enjoy it. I've got to be honest with Matty. I could see why. I could see why the crowd at the O2. I don't know how many was in there, but they seem to enjoy it. And look, let's be clear. Derek Chisora has reinvented himself a few times. And I remember his pro debut. I remember him winning the ABAs. I remember him turning over with Frank all those years ago. Dean Powell was his manager. And I was there when he won a British title off Danny Williams at Upton Park on the Kevin Mitchell Seedless undercard. I like Derek. He's become this... almost like what the Brits absolutely love. He's game as a badger. He's fun. You never quite know what's going to come out of his mouth, and he turns up to have a fight. And in this sport of boxing at the moment, when we're being told by the Andre Wards and the Terence Crawfords and the Shakur Stevensons that it's fashionable not to get hit, and it's the new thing not to engage, it's actually quite enjoyable to have someone like Derek that says, almost Nigel Benn-esque, I'm going to hit you, you're going to hit me, and we're going to have a fight. And that's what Derek brings to the table, and the public love that. I have to say,
it was not a boxing match. That was certainly not a boxing match.
And you preempted my next point. There isn't a boxing coach anywhere in the world that would teach their kids to box like that. I mean, it kind of goes the complete opposite of what we got into boxing for: the sweet science, the speed, agility, dynamicism, people setting traps, fighting with their feet. We saw none of that last night. What we saw last night was, and we're probably going to dissect Joe Joyce individually, but what we saw last night was two heavyweights at a stage, at a level, at a point, who literally just said, we're going to give it our best go, best shot. We're not going to try and win this fight. We just don't want to lose it. And it was a slow race, and Derek got over the line, and probably rightly so too.
One of the funny things that somebody said is like, how can Joyce fight this way with Salas as his trainer? Like, how could Salas stick around? I don't think they understand. If you're on 10% and you're with the guy who's getting six figures each time out, geez, I don't know. Why would you stick around?
Well, I sometimes look at the American in the room in nights like this. I remember looking at Terence Crawford when Khan fought Brooke, and the crowd and the production and the money. He must have known what they was on, because Bomac was in at 10% for Amir's end. And Terence must have thought, if you're going to be a boxer, this is the place to do it. And I think Salas would have thought the same last night. He said, of all the brilliant Cubans I've had come through my gym, who we've had to beg, borrow, and steal, we've had to persuade and cajole promoters to get them on shows. And here we have a Jerry Chisora and a Joe Joyce fighting like this to this sort of crowd on a primetime slot, getting paid what they're getting paid. I sometimes think we're island racers over here, and everything's our own little hub. Our football, our boxing, our rugby, it's its own little hub. And definitely, I agree. Salas would have been thinking, "Wow, of all the great fighters I've had, this is where I'm earning this much money."
This isn't one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where I'm earning so much money, and I'm in such a big arena, and the production's amazing, and it's for this one. Yeah, I said last night to you, I wonder what Salas is thinking, because it was a strange fight.
Teofilo Stevenson died in a leaky shack, and this guy is making fucking almost $1 million.
Absolutely. And we could talk about, like, I often, reference, if there's ever been a time to be a boxer in this country, it's now. If you can be with Frank already, and you can have half an idea on how to do it, if you can talk a bit and you know how to sell, there's never been a better time to be a boxer. And last night was proof of that.
And Chisora said, "Oh, that was not my last fight. That was just my last fight at the O2." So, so as far as it goes, he's got two more apparently. Is one of those a rematch with Joe Joyce?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. If I could just pinch in there, I think the Dillian White one's going to go, and I think the 50th one will be a farewell.
It's such an odd time for choice for opponents. Like, you're not going to want to put one of your up and coming undefeated prospects in with this guy or anything like that, and he's not going to want to fight, your everyday chump, that I think there's almost a problem with the Del Boy not even getting up for that, coming in horribly out of shape and losing. So it'll be interesting, as has his entire career. But Joe Joyce,
don't rule out something bizarre. Look, I think Dillian White's already said they want to do a third one. It's a third one, right? Isn't it? I think it's a third one.
Yeah,
they want to do
it
a
would
third
be.
one. And if win, lose or draw, Derek can always come back, because he's always, for the last 5 years, he's played off of this mantra that heavyweights can lose fights, which they should be able to. So a loss won't be held against him. And if it's against Dillian White, it's quite understandable. There's a good chance he could beat Dillian. But I think the last fight would be something. I think don't rule out something silly. Don't rule out. I don't know. Some of the guys in the chat might have some names, but it could be bizarrely a Huey Fury, or it could be.
Maybe,
it could be. I don't know. A going home Anthony Joshua. I don't know. But he's got a lot of friends in boxing, and he's very well thought of. And he does sell. People do like to watch Derek Chisora fight week and fight night.
Do you think there's enough money in it for him to lure Deontay Wilder over?
Oh, that's a really good shout. That's what I'm looking for. That type of shout. Because Deontay Wilder won't be happy the way he's gone out. And Derek Chisora is looking for a big name. That could be perfect.
Yeah, it's you never know. It is just that bizarre. Every stage of his career has been bizarre. The Hay fight, man. I mean, that was the whole everything leading into it. And then I remember the ring that night. It was outside, and it was just a downpour. And it was almost like, it's good that Hay got him out of there when he did, because A, he had been swinging hard from round one, and B, the ring was getting wetter and wetter. And a guy like Hay, to throw the way he was, it was going to be freaking hard for him to keep his footing. That was that was one of the more interesting fights in like 10, 12 years ago.
Good observation, that, because I always thought that if Derek can survive another 6 minutes at this pace with David Hay, I think he'd have turned that fight an interesting way. But David Hay got him out of there just at the right time. And I think that was the beginning of the decline for David Hay. I think injuries are taking their toll, the split with Adam Booth, and then all that happened after that. But I think if Derek Chisora, if you look at in boxing sliding door moments, ones that got away and ones that you got, I think Derek Chisora would look at that fight and go, if I could have just kept him at that pace for another 6 minutes, because Derek can come on strong, I think Darren would have been the pressing, more aggressive fighter, and I think that would have been an interesting second after that fight.
Yeah, and one, Hay was never a great motor guy. He was getting people out and getting them out early. There's a fair amount of questions about how he would do deeper in fights.
And Matty, if I can just come in now, that all happened after Derek lost to Vitaly Klitschko, and at the time, nobody gave Derek a prayer, and he didn't win any of that fight, but he boxed incredibly well. He was brave, he was tough, he was determined, and Derek done something that we've not seen a lot of heavyweight boxers do at that time. He came to have a go, and he was stubborn, and he weren't going away. And a lot of people fell in love with Derek Chisora that night, because he was in there with a very good heavyweight champion. That was a very good performance away from home, although he lost it.
I have some qualms with Derek for things that are not boxing related, but I really came to like him as a fighter during the and after the Malik Scott fight, because that was actually a really interesting 50-50 fight with the forums, and Scott had looked in pretty good form as we had seen him. He had actually had a couple of years out of the ring from a shoulder injury. He was a fairly hard luck fighter, honestly. And we were interviewing Don Charles after the fight, and just talking about like how they got on before and after, and how much respect they have for him. And Don just spoke highly of him. He's like, Blake Scott is he's a heavyweight that throws combinations like he's a middleweight, this, that, and the other. But there was a certain camaraderie that they had, that Derek Chisora, there's some people that box, but they aren't boxers. They aren't fighters. That's not what they are. Derek Chisora is part of the fraternity of fighters and part of the fraternity of the boxing community. I remember, Malik had given them each some cigars because he's a big cigar smoker. And I think Don Charles still might keep him today. He said he's never smoked, never will. But that was one of the things that he appreciated most in the boxing ring. But those were the good old days. And I have a lot of very fond memories of Chisora.
And as we're talking about Derek, and it's like, it's not his retirement. It wasn't his retirement night last night. And he's already expressed an interest in going on a couple more. But it is worth remembering in this era where we want fighters to fight the best, and we crave fighters to take on challenges. Derek's a guy that fought Tyson Fury 3 times, and if we go back to the first one, it was Derek Chisora that was promoted by Frank Warren. It was a Frank Warren show. Derek Chisora was the undefeated British champion at the time, and Tyson Fury, if any of the guys in the chat remember, had to turn that one around. He was struggling. He was having a hard night of it that night. I'm not saying he wasn't going to win, but he had to show me something, and he did. That's one of the fights I always credit Mick Hennessy with, of getting Tyson Fury to a point where you've done ever so well at domestic level, fighting the likes of Derek Chisora, an unbeaten British champion on Derek's show. And then don't forget, he fought David Haye and Vitaly Klitschko, Malik Scott. He fought a Robert Helenius. Did he fight Robert Helenius abroad, or was he at home? I don't remember.
He got robbed against Robert
got robbed
Helenius.
blind Helenius.
Robbed.
And he fought a Caballero. We know how good Caballero is. And he fought Pulev twice. And when you go back, this is a guy that's beaten Carlos Takam. He's beaten Pulev. He's beaten Joe Joyce. Beaten Gerald Washington. He's beaten the David Price. There's a lot of respectability about his record, and his record stinks of someone that fought everybody pretty much of his era, pretty much.
Oh, absolutely. I think the only thing that's a shame, and it's like not a knock on him, like I think it's a knock on his resume, but I think it would have been cool for him to come fought stateside at some point.
That would have been nice.
Just never materialized, unfortunately. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's because not enough people stateside care about Derek Chisora. There's just far more money for him fighting in the UK, no matter who he's fighting, than coming stateside. It just probably economically didn't make any sense for him. So,
and I think if you look at his record, Matty, that's been Derek's brief. Like, I'm going to fight the Takams, I'm going to fight the Spitkers, I'm going to fight the David Prices, I'm going to go in twice with Parker, I'm going to go in twice with Pulev, I'm going to go in with Joe Joyce, bring Gerald Washington over. They're expecting me to get beat. They're trying to blow life into Gerald. I'm going to beat him and turn that one over. I'm going to fight a Caballero abroad. This is a guy that says, look, if you pay me, I'll turn up. And I think as boxing fans, that's what we like from our fighters. Turn up and fight the very best. Or if you can't fight the very best because there's world titles involved, fight the next tier. And Derek's done that. He's always been a brave, game fighter. And I think before we criticise or sometimes get our boxing snobby hats on, I think we've got to respect that about Derek. He's always turned up, and he's always turned up to fight.
Yeah, I think he's basically like the consummate gatekeeper for the title. Like, he was never gonna be the guy, but if you couldn't get past him, the odds are you weren't gonna have a chance at beating whoever the heavyweight champion was at the time, especially in the eras that he was fighting in. On the other hand, we have Joe Joyce, who is old, but he's had a short professional career. It looked promising, and then Zhang swole his eye up. Then Zhang knocked him into next Sunday, and now he has this tight decision loss to Chisora, who we all know is well past his best. Is there any sense in him continuing on? Like, I think he is, but does that just seem foolish to you at this point?
Yeah, so let's be clear here. We're not being after timers, or we're not being wise after the event. Far from it. The people on this pod, the guys that come on this panel, the guys and girls in the chat, we've been talking about the red flags that have followed Joe Joyce around for a very long time. And if you go back to the Asylum pods after the Parker fight, we was on here talking about, Joe's going to have to really work on an awful lot of basics, because when they get a bit bigger, a little bit more elusive, they can hold a shot and throw one back. Joe's going to find himself in deep waters. And he found himself in deep waters against Joe Parker, but he got away with it. And then straight after Joe Parker, he got done by Zhang first time, then the second one. But for me, and we spoke about all these fights, we spoke about Joe so many times in this pod. And if you go back to the pod after the Cash Alley fight, that's when everybody on this panel, people in the chat were saying, Joe ain't got another win in him. Because that Cash Alley fight was more than a red flag. It was bizarre. It was odd. It was weird because Joe had lost everything that made him the fighter he was. He was even slower. He was very predictable. He was incredibly static. He hadn't got any toughness. He was easily wobbled. It's almost like something that's left him. And bear this in mind, sports people, it's not very logical sport. It comes and goes, and people can fall off a cliff with sport. And I think after the Cash Alley fight, we said it on this pod, Joe has fallen off a cliff, and he's not there. And the next fight will tell us an awful lot. Now, if me and you had a conversation and said, look, Joe's going to get stopped twice by Zhang, but Frank Warren's going to bring Zhang back to try and get him going again. And then he's going to bring it back against Cash Ali. Then he's going to bring it back against Derek Chisora. Frank Warren's been really loyal to Joe. Frank's been brilliant to Joe. But Joe just hasn't got it anymore. If you can't get past Derek Chisora and you make such a fist of it against Cash Ali, who at best is an area belt kind of guy, that kind of tells us that Joe has gone over the cliff. And I don't think we might see him because boxing can be a bit ruthless and promoters can fancy maybe a Moses Itauma. Let's bring Joe in for Moses, or let's bring David Adelaide in and we'll get rid of one of them. But for me, championship boxing, headlining cards, talk of world titles, no, that's over for Joe, I'm afraid. And I don't enjoy saying stuff like that, but something that he has left him.
Well, I'll tell you really what stood out after the fight for me, Des, was the fact that Frank Warren, a boxing promoter, notoriously some of the most greedy people on the face of the earth, let's be honest, seemed, after probably making money off of this event, Frank Warren seemed hesitant about talking about future plans for either of them.
Yeah,
he seemed genuinely worried about both of these guys moving forward. And I think that speaks volumes. When the guy who knows he can still make a few $100K off of you is saying, maybe think about this, man, you might want to heed that warning.
Do you think maybe Frank's in a different place now? Look, I'm not saying Frank ain't still Frank, but other doors have opened for Frank Warren, and boxing's now going into a part of the world that's offering different types of money for different types of fights. Do you think Frank now could be in a place where he says, look, Derek, for what it's worth, I don't think it's worth you carrying on. Or Joe, you've lost 3 of your last 4. And to be honest, you made a right meal of the one you did win. I don't think it's worth my time. I don't think it's worth the aggravation because we've got so many other areas to go into. I'm not saying that Frank's being utterly ruthless and doesn't give a stuff about the kids. What I'm saying is, I just think Frank's now, this isn't Frank Warren, spinning plates, keeping Box Nation going. This is Frank Warren who's got a deal with the Riyadh season. And this is Frank Warren who says, there's an awful lot of doors opening for us. We don't have to hang on to the Derek Chisors and the Joe Joyces anymore.
So even this is not directly related, you made me think of something, and I finally think I might have found a way to phrase this. Has the arrival of Turki Al-Sheikh on the boxing scene effectively turned the promoters that we once knew into talent scouts for his operation?
Yeah, I think they're subbing out. I think, there's how is it? It's like, so His Excellency is like saying to the promoters all around the world, whether it's Oscar, Eddie, Frank, I'm going to sub this out to you. Bring something to the table. And they're talent scouting for him. Absolutely right. But look, if you can imagine a big sports broadcaster, say in the UK, Sky, they should have done this years ago. Said to all the promoters, whether it's Eddie or Frank or Mick Hennessy or Dennis Hobson, there's no exclusive deals here. Present me with a good card, and if I like it, if I think it works, we'll put it on. That's pretty much what His Excellency Turki Al Sheikh is doing, isn't it? He's saying to promoters around the world, show me what you've got.
And I'll give you the best money if you leash your talent to me for a night.
That's it. But that's where, I mean, look, there's an argument of we're losing boxing to the Middle East, but we want the best cards, don't we? We want the best fight in the best. And so far, from what we've seen from that particular region, as where boxing is concerned, I think it's been positive. I don't want to get into the political side of it. I don't know enough about it, and I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores of should it or shouldn't be. I just think that from a boxing standpoint, we've seen some really good cards out there, and we've seen fights we would never have seen if it weren't for them guys.
Yeah, it's an odd thing, and it's I guess, you know, if somebody really feels uncomfortable about Saudi Arabia and you love boxing, you're gonna have to, you know, you got to step in and just say, oh, I won't watch it, you know. But
Matty, I knew someone years ago that thought Las Vegas was a devil's playground. You know,
it is.
It's a boxing match. It's a boxing match, isn't it? It's two fighters that want to win as much as they can, and whether it's Las Vegas, whether it's Brooklyn, whether it's Madison Square Garden, whether it's the O2, like, we're never going to get boxing in sinless cities, are we? It's that type of sport. Look, again, I was speaking to Michael the other day about this, and you know how sport is being bought, and if you don't want to take the Saudi money, you might get left behind. I totally understand that argument, and I'm not sure that you're ever going to entice the Canelos over, because they're already getting ridiculous amounts of money, $250 million a year, $300 million a year. But certainly for the likes of Jaime Munguia, for the likes of Denzel Bentley, for the likes of Moses Itauma or Fabio Wardley, these guys can get life-changing money over the next 1, 2, 3 fights. So who are we to say, no, you can't take that? And if you're a promoter and you're saying, listen, it's all been laid on the table for us, they want to do all the heavy lifting, and all we've got to do is present a good card, then it's a win-win for us as fans.
Yeah, ultimately, all we can do is see if we like the fights or not. And the thing, like, boxing is not a sport full of a bunch of good, honorable people, generally speaking, and that's sport and everything. I was talking with somebody about some band, some singer, and like, they shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, if you looked over the names in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like, tell me, like, it. Over half of them slept with underage girls, if you want to dig back in history. But It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Good People.
Correct.
So we just need to set that aside. This is prize fighting. Like, I dislike Ryan Garcia because of many things he says outside of the ring. But I don't think that's why he should not be allowed to box right now. No, that's because he was found to be using performance-enhancing drugs, and he and that puts into jeopardy the health and the future livelihood of your opponent. That's my problem with Ryan Garcia. So if they want to throw a bunch of money at boxing and stuff like that, that's great. There's shitbags about in boxing. What are you going to do? I've given up. No one has clean hands. Give me the fights is what I say. Because all the American promoters can produce is Canelo versus Berlanga, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. And you shouldn't feel guilty for having that view, because it's a bit like when you ask a Newcastle fan, and if you're not aware, Newcastle is in the northeast of England. It's a huge city, and they've been brought out by an ownership model that's got links to the Middle East, and they're asking Newcastle fans on the ground, how do you feel about it? But the average Newcastle fan's like, I just want to see my team do well. Now, we've kind of lost a bit of morality in sport, but as a fan, we all have to step back and say, I just want to see good fights being made. And we shouldn't feel guilty for thinking that.
You know, and the problem is this is like a very deep philosophical discussion, and I'll kind of leave it at this, and we'll move on. But I think when you look at it, grand scheme, and everything that's going on, basically, you know, all throughout the Western world, is we're becoming a fully integrated global community, and we're having problems dealing with that. And it's
Correct.
from everything from politics to business to sport. And it's just one of those things. And as far as I'm concerned, after watching the sport religiously for almost 2 decades at this point in time, if somebody wants to come in and make the fights that I've been wanting to see, fuck it, you know, like let's kumbaya this shit. I don't have the time, but anyhow, also on this card, I didn't see much of it, so I'm gonna be leaning on you, Des. But I did catch this one. Well, it looks like Shakur Stevenson's going to have to find a new dance partner because Archie Sharp lost his O. Ryan Garner really came on in the later the half of that fight, hit him, hurt him, bossed him around. A good W for the man. And Archie Sharp back to the drawing board. I think he's one of those guys who spent a little bit too much time on ice and lost his best days.
Right, so Archie Sharp has been a prospect now for nearly 10 years, and you probably couldn't tell me his best win. Last night was Frank Warren saying to him, you've had nearly 10 years of this, you're now going to fight a live one. And Ryan Garner is a live one. He's hot. Archie done things last night that were his first times. It's his first time he's been in the other corner. It's the first time he's fought a kid that's probably going to beat him. It's the first time he's been the underdog by the bookies. It's the first time the promoters probably thought, I could take Ryan to win this because it suits me. So Archie had to deal with an awful lot last night. I really liked Archie Sharp in this fight. I thought it was his best performance. I thought he boxed ever so well. I thought he dealt with a really talented, aggressive, come forward type fighter that really meant it. And I was really pleased to see Archie round 4 and 5 being stubborn and not going anywhere. It was a clash of styles and it really blended well. Now, Ryan Garner is in a good vein of form. We see him last boxing Liam Dillon, and that didn't tell us much about Liam Dillon because Liam Dillon was not a big punch. Sorry, it didn't tell us much about Ryan because Liam Dillon's not a big puncher. And we've already spoken about Liam Dillon on this pod. He's probably a kid of a level that's probably 1 or 2 below a good British champion, although Liam was a British champion himself. But Ryan had a lot to prove last night because Archie would come to win. I thought Archie worked really well both in orthodox and southpaw stance. I thought Archie fell into the counter puncher, but he was aggressive with it. So if Ryan missed or if Ryan held his feet or admired his work, Archie was popping back at him. And then Archie started to time this beautiful backhand left overhand and he turned it into a hook last minute and he caught Ryan a few times with it. So my takeaway is from Archie Sharp, there's a lot of life left in you. That was your best performance. That was your best opponent. You showed me you can fight on the back foot. You showed me you can survive in a quite an intense pocket. Also show me Archie Sharp's not a puncher because they do like to tell kids this, you're a puncher. Archie Sharp's not a puncher, but he's a good boxer and he's got a good corner. I think if Archie Sharp could just overcome that point, well, you know what? I lost a good one. I think Archie Sharp can rebuild and come back. With regards to Ryan Garner, I think we'll keep Ryan at domestic level. I think there's plenty of good fights for him at domestic level. I think he's still got to polish it up a little bit because if Archie could punch, I think he might have caught Ryan out. But I think certainly we want to look at maybe, I don't know, maybe bringing in a Jazza Dickens, maybe a Jordan Gill, them sort of older heads that I think he can overcome and learn a lot from, get rounds, maybe even a Zelfa Barrett. But I think last week or the week before I went away, we was talking about Reece Bellotti. And Reece Bellotti is the British and Commonwealth champion. And I think that's a fight that Matchroom would have said to Reece, let's keep you winning until a big fight comes along. And maybe this is the big fight for Reece Bellotti. So the point I'm making is, Matty, there's an awful lot of options for both kids. I think Archie Sharp can move on. And I think Ryan Garner's got a lot of fights at domestic level to polish him up a little bit before he pushes on to European and maybe the top 15.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's it was close at times. It was just I think there was just a little bit of a power and dare I say a timing disparity between the two, and I think that has a fair bit to do with the time that Sharp has spent away from the ring. You got to remember the last time out, he was lucky to get out of there with a W, getting dropped a couple of times in the first round against nobody at the end of the day. So let's see here. Also on there again, I didn't see these, so I am going to be bouncing these off of you. I believe this was this a rematch between Dennis McCann and Ionut Baluta? Was the first one a draw, maybe?
Yeah, it was really, really interesting fight, this, and a lot of British boxing fans, all the guys in the chat, would have been looking forward to this one. Although Garner and the Sharp was my pick for the night, that was the one I really thought had a lot of jeopardy. I thought McCann would come through the Baluta fight, but I knew Baluta would ask questions of Dennis last night, and we'd find out a little bit more about Dennis McCann. Now, you've got to follow the chain back a little bit. Dennis has, in the last couple of years, he's had a change of trainer. He's relocated from Kent or southeast London, Kent areas, up to Liverpool. He's got himself a new trainer. He's with Joe McAnally, so he's boxing in good company. And I think Joe's had a bit more of a broad look at Dennis because he's not adding from scratch. And I think, having assessed Dennis, I think Joe's realised you're not the puncher they said you were, and you're not the puncher you probably think you are. I think Dennis has stopped 2 in his last 7, so he's not a puncher at this level, and there's a few more levels to go. So I think Joe has been getting Dennis in the gym, working on his feet, and let's see if you can win fights with your feet, not just your hands. Now, I was a little bit critical of Joe in Dennis's last fight against Brad Strand, because Dennis had Brad Strand out of there, I think in the second or the third, and Joe pulled him back and said, take your time. Don't go too fast. I actually thought that was letting Brad off the hook. But on reflection, if I'd have said that to Joe, maybe Joe would have said to me, well, actually, Des, we know we've got the Baluta one coming up. I want Dennis to box to orders intelligently. I want to improve his range of distance. I want him to stop admiring his big shots. I want him to fight with his feet as well. And I want to see how we navigate a fight over 12 rounds. So maybe I've got to take back something I said about Joe McAnally in that last one. Because last night, Dennis was brilliant. His IQ, he showed a lot of ring IQ. He showed good distance. He showed good discipline. He boxed to very strict orders. His feet were very good. And every time Baluta came in, because he's very unorthodox, he's very gangly, Dennis kept very focused, chin down, hands up, caught him coming in, counter-punched him, spun off, reset. He was in charge for every round. He boxed really well, beautifully, in fact. And that's a really good win for Dennis McCann. That's a really good win for him, because that puts that other one to bed, which was a bit of a controversial one, because Dennis got a cut and he was starting to fall behind in the fight. And trainers do what trainers should do. They looked after their kid and pulled him out of there, and they went to the cards, and I think it was a draw. But Dennis McCann can be really pleased with himself last night, and so can Joe McAnally. They've got something in Dennis. Maybe we should talk about where did Dennis go from here, and perhaps the obvious one is sort of like a Liam Davis, but I wouldn't like to see that. I think Liam's just a bit ahead of Dennis at the moment. But I do think that maybe a Morell or a Lafima or a De Rosa, I think they're a really good fight for Dennis McCann at the moment.
Yeah, that's it's kind of interesting. I guess if they were to put him in with Liam Davies quick, that would be saying the promoter sees a different ceiling between the two of them and is saying that let's move one up. Yeah, that fight is almost too good to make. Let it marinate, as they say.
If we're being honest, Matty, I think we're talking about Liam Davies fighting maybe the TJ Doheny's or the Sam Goodmans, or we want to see Liam Davies get pushed into that top 5 of what is a brilliant division. I don't think we can talk about Dennis like that, not yet. But I think we can certainly say to Dennis, let's see how you get on at European level, sort of somewhere between 12 and 17, around that neck of the woods. And there's loads of kids from Spain and Italy that are not big punchers, but they will ask questions of Dennis McCann. And if Dennis is like he was last night, he comes through them fights. So I think there's loads of learning fights to be had. And look, to quote a lot of fighters who have got rivals in their division and they think they're a little bit, let them go on. Let them have the big ones. Let them have a bit of wear and tear, and we'll catch them on the way down. There's work to be done for Liam Davis, and there's work to be done for Dennis McCann, but I think they're slightly at different levels at the minute.
Yeah, both of them are definitely solid fighters as far as the domestic scene goes. It's all about figuring out if either plays on the world scene ultimately at the end of the day. And I don't know, with a draw against Baluta, yeah, you might make the argument that there's already been shown that McCann might be a little bit more European level than world level at the end of the day, but we shall see.
Sorry, and going back on that, Matty, we can make the comparison because Vincenzo Lefemina, we've seen him get beat by Liam Davis, and Lefema was in that fight at times. He was pushing, he was pressing. So I actually think that it would be nice to see how Dennis McCann does with a Lefema or a De Rosa or a Morell. I think there's loads of work to be done. To repeat myself, there's loads of work to be done just a level below Liam Davis. I think Liam Davis is just a step ahead at the moment. So I wouldn't want to see him go in now and we could lose what could potentially be a huge fight in 18 months.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're thinking about like how you might want to play this out, like regardless of either one of them and what their ceiling is, it's somewhere below that of Inoue. So you might as well wait for him to vacate before you even think about going and trying to grab a title.
Now you've got your manager's hat on, haven't you?
Yeah, I every once in a while it comes on, and then my bloodthirsty hat finds its way back. I'm like, but so
chuck him in with Inoue, yeah, I know.
But here's one. So I see that Moises Itauma is still continuing to look good. His brother faltered a little bit earlier on, but he apparently got Walk out of there in a couple of rounds, which, Walk has definitely seen far better days. He's lost at least 4 out of his last 6 as I'm scrolling through this card on BoxRec. But to get a guy with that much seasoning on him, that much experience, it's definitely a good statement for a guy just stepping into double-digit fights.
I like Moses. I was talking to my mate Terry last night while it was happening, and what I like about Moses, he's one of them heavyweight prospects that we can talk about and use the word talent. He's not trading off of muscles. He's not trading off of big punches. He might have all of that, but the first thing you look at when you see Moses is this is a talented kid. He seems to slow it down. He seems to see spaces and gaps. He throws shots. He puts his hands together really well. I've got a hunch that Moses Itauma is going to be a really big deal in boxing, and I think the hardest part now is matching him because he needs rounds. We can't put Moses in there with the European class fighters yet, although he might beat them. But where do you go after that? We need to get Moses doing 6, 8, 10 rounders, getting some minutes under his belt, getting his money's worth out of his opponents, and then putting him in for titles. Because when he wins them, I don't think he'll look back. But we need to make sure, just like I say about a lot of these prospects, whether it's Fabio for his level, Johnny Fisher at his level, heavyweight prospects, all prospects, they need to get rounds in this window. And I will need to see Moses get more rounds. Now that's going to be so hard because he's so good. He doesn't seem to be to me, he's even putting an awful lot in his punches at the moment. He's just got a great snap. He understands distance. He understands angles. He knows how to throw combinations. This is a talented heavyweight. And we don't often say that about heavyweights at this stage. Very good fighter.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes because there's definitely a concerning gap between what's existing currently, Tyson Fury and those below him a step, but who is going to fill their shoes so much? So it'll be good to see if he can actually do that because you need someone kind of to keep that going because I mean honestly, ever since Lennox Lewis. With a little bit of gap on obviously between Lewis and Fury, but I mean the British heavyweight scene has been sound, and there's always been fighters worth following. And I mean, even during that gap, you guys had your guys who you liked and had a strong domestic scene.
No, listen, British heavyweight boxing has always been the king of Europe. We that's our thing, and whether it's Julius Francis, Danny Williams, whether it's the really good ones like the Lennoxes, we've had Frank Bruno. We had a brilliant time recently with Fury and AJ, but don't forget the input from people like Dillian White, Derek Chisora, Joe Joyce, David Price.
Even below them, like when you had guys like Martin Rogan and Sexton, you had some good kind of journeyman guys just to test the new guys out.
They held titles, them guys, and our titles mean a lot to us. And our British titles and our Commonwealth titles and our European titles, they mean a lot to us. So you can always build a show on two good heavyweights fighting for some sort of domestic title. So we're quite fortunate like that. Remember, we're a small country. Like we're like one of your states. So we're lucky to have that. We're a little bubble. So if you've got two heavyweights want to fight for the British title, it means something to us. We've always had a good scene, a sound scene. We've always had good fighters. And to be honest, that's pretty much how Derek Chisora's had such a good career, such a long career. If I get beat against one of the good ones, I can always come back and fight one of my own. And it still sells. And it always does. So I go back to Moses. The problem ain't how good he is. The problem ain't how far he can go. I think he'll go a long, long way. For me, the problem is with a matchmaker at the moment. How do we match such a talented kid? How do we get rounds out of him? Now, we know that domestic rivals, say Fabio, Frazier, below them guys would be David Adelaide, maybe Johnny Fisher. He's a area level kid. They're not going to go nowhere near Moses. This kid can really fight. He beats all of them. So it's going to be very hard to say, look, we don't want to push you over that lot just yet because you're still a baby. He's only 19. I know there's a lot of talk about winning world titles and beating Mike Tyson's record. Scratch that. To keep Moses busy for the next 2 years, we need to bring in guys like Wack, who are big, strong, tough, have got an awful lot of experience, and we might get rounds out of them. And if you can get, I don't know, over the next 5 fights, something around 30 odd, 40 rounds, something around between the 30 and 40 mark over the next 5 fights, and do that for the next 2 years, I honestly believe you can say to Moses, jump straight in at world level and go and win yourself a world title. And if you can pick up a British in between that, if you can pick up a European, but I don't want him to be pushed into that too soon, because once you're there, you can't come back.
The problem is the kind of opponent you're describing is very tough to find because they have to be durable, but not clever. If that makes sense.
And what we want is about 4 or 5 Kevin Johnsons. That's what we need right now. 4 or 5 Kevin Johnsons, but they're not about.
Well, unfortunately, he's stuck in Russia now, so
they're just not about.
Yeah, he'll be stuck fighting their Olympic turnovers.
And ironically, somebody pulled up Marius Wack and thought, this is the guy, this is the one we want. But he didn't go more than 2 rounds. So it's going to be very difficult. And the hardest part of this exciting prospect's career will be matching him.
Yeah, because the tough, like a lot of people, if you're like other up and comers, they're not going to want to give up their spot on the ladder, considering what Itouma brings to the table too. So
also when you get a phone call from your promoter saying, "I've got your fight against Moses," it's like, well, what does my promoter think of me now? Because Moses, this is the guy that's getting the big push. He's got the Nike sponsorship. He's being headlined. He's out 5-6 times a year on TV. This guy has been given the push. So you're not going to get domestic kids take that one, and you're going to stay clear of the top guys around America or the higher end of European boxing. but you need to find that group in the middle somewhere that can offer rounds. So it's not just Moses' issue. This is matchmakers' issue for guys like Johnny Fisher and guys like Fraser Clark. The public want to see more rounds out of them. The kids need more rounds, but it's very hard to get.
Yeah, that's going to be a struggle. Now, the rest of this card, feel free to kind of talk about what you want to or what you thought was good. What I thought was most interesting, just scrolling through the results, is seeing that Brandon Lee was on there, and he for the first time in his life he had the referee only scoring the fights. For an American, that had to be a strange moment.
Yeah, Brandon Lee was on there. He beat Juan Anacona, wasn't it, last night? He boxed reasonably well. Sam Noakes boxed well. I thought Bassi was very brave, but it was pretty routine. I think that the big ones we saw were from sort of Moses, Ryan Garner, Joe Joyce, Dennis McCann. The rest were pretty much as you'd expect. And I'd like to give a shout out to maybe Inda Bassi, who I thought boxed ever so well against Sean Noakes, and probably never got the score that he would have liked because he put an awful lot into it, but he was losing the fight, and he did lose that fight. But just a special mention to Inda.
All right. Well, we will clear that out of the queue here, and we will move stateside to the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. If you've ever had Little Caesars pizza, you will know that it is hot, it is ready, but it is not necessarily good. But it's there for cheap when you need them. And on this card, a little bit of a surprise. I was thinking about this fight, Des, and I got really upset that I didn't pull the trigger. And I'm like, you know what? This LePage, she hasn't been around for a while, I think Shields is going to smoke her, and I didn't do that. I bet I could have gotten good odds on Shields by stoppage. Stupid me, but second round, she just stepped on the gas, and Vanessa LePage, Joannis, she was adios. Very quick win for Shields in this combination light, heavyweight. Some organizations don't want to sanction women's fights over 175 pounds, so they just cap it here. But whatever it may be, GWOAT now owns it for whatever that is worth. She adds another trinket to her collection. Now, what do you think of the GWOAT's performance?
Look, we have to. Joe Kennedy made a point to me in the week, and it's a really good point. He articulated it ever so well. Yes, we have to agree that Clarissa's achievements have been fantastic, but if you look beyond the headline, it's quite a thin pool, and she's unfortunately, it's a curse of women's boxing. There aren't many top level fighters around holding world titles for you to say, that's my Amanda Serrano, that's my Katie Taylor. You know, that they've not got a lot of them in women's boxing at the moment. So what we know about LePage is that she's quite raw, she's quite inexperienced, and I don't want to put a number on it, but how many women are actually registered to be professional heavyweight boxers? I don't know. I wouldn't have thought many. So Clarissa's jumped up, and Clarissa's done what we thought she would do. I didn't think she'd get her out of there in the first round. She buzzed her very early. LePage went down, and then Shields, 2 Olympic medals, undisputed at however many weights. She knew, I can get to you, and she did. So it was pretty much one-sided. It wasn't a lot to look at. I think it was a much better fight on the card that you're going to go through. But congratulations to Claressa Shields. It's another notch. It's another congratulations. It's another achievement. But it's very hard to get excited about it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Even as a big fan of women's boxing and an advocate, that a lot of their top tier fights are as good as basically anything you might see on the men's side of the ledger. This did not qualify, and the problem is there's just not many dance partners for Shields. She's going to be struggling, and hopefully, watching this Olympics, maybe there might be somebody that catches people's attention here. I'll be watching to see what might come out of it, but maybe we'll touch on a little Olympics here in a second. What was that?
I think it's really hard not to be I want to give Claressa Shields all her credit and all the flowers because she's a huge achiever. But we just don't have the quality of opposition to measure against just yet. I mean, she's had some good wins, don't get me wrong, but the quality of opposition just isn't there for at the moment. So I hope Claressa Shields is remembered for being a huge achiever. But speaking of somebody that's been here watching it, she's never had that much to beat. And that's not her fault. That's just a circumstance of the times. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, Matty, if you don't mind.
Sure.
On that card, and you know all about the backstory to these guys, and it was a brilliant fight. I'm not going to pronounce his first name. Maybe you can. Ergashev versus Julian Smith. Tell us all about that one.
What a great freaking show that was. Very close fight, split decision. I thought that Smith had a little bit wider. And now this backstory on Smith, we've talked about him before on the podcast, and he has had back-to-back upset victories here. He came into this fight at 8-2. That's all. Not a very the deepest resume, but he's on a 3-fight winning streak right now after losing a couple fights early in his career. And he came into a fight, not this one, the one prior, against the undefeated Orestes Velasquez, who is highly touted as quite a big underdog, over 10-1 in some places, and he stopped him in the 9th. And I came into this one against Ergashev, who has a great amateur background. He'd been again against Matias. You found out actually before the fight that one of the reasons that he had struggled against Matias, even though he did not mention it, he did not use it as an excuse, is about a month and a half before that fight, he was stabbed in the leg. It was nasty. Right. It was like some gang-related violence. So, like, he might have some issues with some mobility now. But again, Ergashev was a really big favorite in this one. I think I swear Smith was paying better than 5-1, and came in again 8-2 fighter. And the great thing about Smith, they call him the Quiet Storm because he's deaf. He was lost his hearing when he was a child, the meningitis. So everything he's doing is just even more tremendous than you could even imagine because he started with this disadvantage. But in this fight where there's a little boring at times, the crowd is booing. He doesn't hear him, so it doesn't influence him. But second round of this fight, he was robbed of a knockdown. He landed 2 consecutive right hands on Ergashev, and for some reason, the ref ruled it was not a knockdown. He didn't ever say it was because of slip or if he thought it was clock. But then in the 5th round, Smith was able to land a left hook around the guard of the southpaw Ergashev and sent him to the canvas with that one. And that point was crucial. I thought that he definitely won probably 6, maybe 7 rounds in the fight, but he ended up winning the fight with all scores of 95-94, 2 of them for him. So that knockdown loomed large, and the fact he didn't get credited for another one in the second it could have definitely hurt him if that hadn't happened. But this is an incredible fighter. Incredible story, and he just keeps picking up these upset victories. And I know it's an odd thing when you're not talking title level, this, that, or the other, but with one more good win under his belt, Julian Quiet Storm Smith, he could be my fighter of the year.
And it's a feel-good story, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's incredible. It's boxing, one of the only sports you can imagine it. Now, the refs do need to start getting better about being right next to the fighters once they hear the 10 seconds or the 5 second, depending on your jurisdiction, because punches after the bell are common in a Julian Smith fight, and you really can't take points away, and it is a little bit of an advantage.
Well, perhaps we'll see new protocol coming because when Smith's fighting, because there'll have to be some sort of system in place so that referees can communicate with him quickly and efficiently. So perhaps we'll see new protocols. But I agree with you; it's a feel-good factor. But in boxing now, we seem to be trying to create and false stories. This is a genuine story, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's nothing that really needs to be manufactured on this one. It's a guy who has the odds stacked against him, who didn't quit when he had some struggles early in his career, and you know, he's on the verge with something like this going on. I'm not saying he could be a household name, but he's on the verge of being one of those guys that people want to talk to, and it'll be, they'll have to do it through a translator, but it's interesting. He could be very inspirational to a specific group of people, and that's good. Everybody needs their heroes.
So Julian Smith from Illinois, we'll keep an eye on him.
Yeah, I sure hope that people do, and I hope he gets one more good W this year, because interesting guy. But let's see here. Also on that card, I didn't see the whole thing. Let's see here. I did see Michelle Rivera and Hugo Alberto Roldan split decision. I have no idea how one of the judges ended up in that position, but Rivera did get the W there. Dropped Roldan in the last round. Roldan is just a really awkward fighter, throws punches at odd times, squares up, and Rivera, for anything that he might lack that we've seen in fights before, obviously losing to Frank Martin a couple fights ago, he is a balanced fighter, technically sound. So when you end up with oftentimes with a guy who's very awkward and gets out of position, the guy who knows how to stay in balance and is in position to throw is probably going to pick him off down the stretch. And that's about what happened. What else here? I saw Cameron Pankey. This guy had lost his previous fight, but he looked super sharp against Shalaik Paisley. Paisley, I mean, only just a 4-4 fighter, but I got to say that there was just some stuff that Pankey was doing in there that I thought would merit looking at him down the road. And Tito Mercado somehow ended up on this card, and he fought Hector Edgardo Sarmiento, and he picked up another stoppage. I think that all but one of his fights have been by stoppage.
Yeah, Tito's a puncher. Well, so it looks like a puncher anyway.
Yeah, and he needs to be find some fights. I mean, you do have to say that knocking out Nakatila in 2 rounds is pretty impressive. The only fighter who did go the distance with him is Indengeni, who has been stopped a couple of times, but we recently saw going the distance with Murataya as well. So
is he still a super? Is he a welterweight or super welter, Matty?
He's a light welterweight.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He can punch, that kid. He can fight. But you're right. It's another one getting in the right opponents to get him the sort of rounds he needs, isn't it?
Well, I'm glad that he's kind of working with Salida now, and it was a DAZN card. Between Golden Boy and Matchroom, there is a good amount of talent at 140 pounds bouncing around there. So hopefully he's at least in that atmosphere, and we can see him tested. I have a hunch he's going to get found out. I like a lot of what I've seen, but I think he's going to get found out.
But you're right. Being on the zone is a good time now for him, because there's a lot of talent in that welterweight division, and there's a lot of opponents for him. So he's another one to watch. Yeah, Tito Mercado.
Yeah. So that one, even though I did not see that fight, I happen to think that was worthy of mentioning on there. But yeah, and that was our weekend of boxing right there. Not a whole lot going on. We had the Jake Paul card a couple of weeks ago that I want to thank Ames for coming in here and taking it over last week. That was greatly appreciated. So we had a show last week. That was handy. A few people were on vacation and such. So that worked out well, myself included. So let's see here. Des, let me ask you. I've been watching just sparingly, and if I could come up with a name, I'd be lying to you. But I have been watching a little bit to the Olympics. Has there been anything that stood out to you? I've heard some dodgy decisions going against some Irish fighters here and there. But other than that, there have definitely been some talented fighters to grace the screen so far.
Yeah, I mean, England have lost 3 already. We've had Great Britain had 3 go out already. Aidan Walsh went out earlier on as well. It's the early stages, and like I've said this so many times. I've been saying this for 20 odd years. Arriving in an Olympic village, settling in, not getting caught out with being starstruck or eating too much in the buffet or the canteen, and going to a few dorms and having a few parties and walking around till 1:30 in the morning, whatever takes your fancy. The hardest part is to really bed in and get focused. And After that, you need to have a good draw, and the draw is really important. Remember this: if Amir Khan had drawn Mario Kindlin in the first round, Amir Khan would have got the first plane home, and nobody would have known who he was. The fact is, he was on the other side of the draw, drew Kindlin in the final, and by then it didn't matter. The draw is really important. So after all your hard work and after all your talent, you need a bit of luck as well. So getting through these first rounds, if you get, I think Aidan Walsh was drawn against a French kid, and I thought Aidan Walsh might have had an argument to say he nicked it. I thought Aidan Walsh boxed well for the system, but I'm a little bit, maybe we'll talk about this. I'm seeing it more and more now where amateur boxers are trying to become Guillermo Rigondeaux. And although it worked for him, and although I enjoyed watching him do it, I'm not quite enjoying everyone else doing it. And I think for the future of boxing, we need to have Olympic boxers looking like boxers again and not matadors or sword fighters. And to go back to Aidan Walsh, what I noticed with him was he was adamant not to get hit and just to flick and catch. So what you're telling me is you want to try and nick a fight. You want to try and manipulate the point scoring system. Now, I'm not blaming the fighters. I'm not blaming the coaches, because that's what the directive is. That's how you win Olympic competitions. And if you win Olympic competitions, people keep their jobs. Funding goes up. I get it. But from a consumer point of view, it's not as exciting as it has been in other games, or perhaps going back before London 2012. So it's very early days yet, Matty. I've gone around the houses a little bit. No, I don't think there's been any bad decisions just yet. I think there's been close fights, but the system and the styles employed will always give us close fights at this stage. I think when we get through to the third round, then we'll start seeing the best in Europe. And then after that, the best in the world. Then after that, we'll see a lot more competitive fights, and we'll see a lot better fighter who can put their shots together, who can give us what we're looking for. That's what I think.
It's, I guess that's probably the problem I had with them taking away the headgear, this, that, and the other. Because if you're gonna keep the way that amateur boxing is scored, I know that they've taken it to a 10-9 instead of how they used to do it, but if you're going to keep the way it's kind of pointed up, similar like the way it was, you might as well leave the headgear on, especially the ladies still have the headgear on. Just make some weird change. I don't know. It's some weird changes, but it's interesting as you watch it, though. Like, you see fighters that even if they lose the fight, that they would win if the two were to meet as professionals over 10 rounds.
Yeah, that can happen, yeah.
But so you hope that a lot of these fighters don't lose their fire for it and miss the chance to go pro when that was probably their better calling. And, kind of what I feel bad for is sometimes you see some of these fighters that look like they'd have pretty decent pro style that are in fairly lockdown countries. Like, I think I saw a fighter from Tajikistan that looked pretty sound the other day, even though he lost. Might have been a decent pro, but you're probably not going to see a Tajiki fighter get a chance to go professional.
Do you have, I don't want to put you on the spot, do you have a particular one that you're following in from the American squad, or not?
No, I don't follow amateur boxing the way that I do. I kind of take a look, just kind of look what's going on and see if anybody says you got to check out so-and-so, and I do it, and then I watch it when it's going on. It's there's already so much to keep track of in the pro game.
Correct,
my brain can only fit in so much information.
I think US squads have been pretty thin over the last, I don't know, going back five cycles, maybe.
Our last male gold medalist was Andre Ward in 2004.
Yeah, and he wasn't the pick going in, believe it or not. He wasn't the pick going in, and your best squad since '84 was probably '96, and that was riddled with talent, like ridiculous amounts of talent that have all gone on to the pros and done amazing things.
Floyd got shafted in that Olympics too, didn't he?
And they was all, from what I hear, they was all going out. Again, the village can get you. You're all going out shopping, partying, eating, drinking. There's 40, 50 European gymnasts all running around. I mean, the village can catch you out. And if you can just, I remember Michael Johnson saying, don't go out, don't leave your dorm, don't worry about parties, don't even sit in the canteen too long. Just stay focused. And when you've won your gold medal, then you can do all the partying you want. But it's not the sort of thing you can enjoy, not while you're competing. And don't forget, you've got outsiders as well that have got passes coming in, and you might have Anthony Joshua wandering around or Lennox Lewis, and it's very easy not to get caught up in it. And I was watching the gymnastics today, and the American team with Simone Bowles, the American team is phenomenal, and Simone Bowles is even more phenomenal. Like, it's night and day how good she is compared to the excellent ones. So, like, she's a phenomenon. She might be the best athlete at these games. And you look at the Americans and the Chinese and the Ukrainians, and you look at their focus, how dedicated, how serious, how driven they are. And then you look at the British girls, and they're all taking their pictures standing next to the flag, or taking their pictures standing next to the Paris 2024. It's almost like some people are here for a vest and a few photos and an experience. I get that. And there are some here that we're here for a gold. And I think if you're a boxer going to a games like this, you're here because you're good enough. You're here because you're 4 fights away from medaling. And once you get into that semi-final, you're 3 rounds away from getting into a final. And that's how you got to look at it. This is, I've got 15 rounds here to win a gold medal. And I think that's pretty much where a boxer needs to be. You have to be focused. You have to be driven. You have to be single-minded. You need a bit of luck. You have to stay away from injuries. You have to recover. You have to keep your weight down. It really is one of the hardest medals to win in these games, a boxing medal. And that's why it gets so much respect. It's a tough competition, this one. There's loads of good fighters in there. There's loads of previous winners. You've got Jalilov in there. You've got Cruz. You've got Arlen Lopez. For me, the American pick would probably be Jamal Harvey. So let's see how he gets on. But again, Great Britain have lost 3
Did he
already.
get knocked out already? Or
no, don't say that.
Out. Let's see here.
What, in the games?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's my pick out the window if that's the case.
I thought I heard some American that got beaten already, and I was
no, you have lost an American today. You have lost an American, but I don't think it was Harvey.
Okay.
Because I've been looking out for him. He's from Baltimore, Harvey. I think it's Baltimore, and I've heard good things about him. So look, again, I've seen some brilliant Americans win worlds, go to an Olympics, and just not quite get it right. And that's normally the gauge. The kid that, like, for example, we've got a Spanish kid, I forget his name now. He had a really good Worlds and a really good Europeans, and now he's ready for the Olympics. He's had a great year. And that's what you need, a kid in the Olympics to have had a good 12 to 18 months. Anthony Joshua, he should have won a world gold before the Olympics. But he got the silver, he went to London and he got the gold. Luke Campbell was the same. Always look out for how many kids in these games here, how they get on in the last 12 months, how they got on in the world, how they get on in the Europeans, how do they get on in the Pan Americans, and that will give you a gauge of who's in really good form. So I'm thinking my pick for America, I'm going to give it to you, Jamal Harvey. I'm expecting him to medal. We'll see.
Yeah, and I was looking at, he wasn't the one that lost. I don't know who did, but
No.
there's like no news about him. I don't even know that his group is off yet. Yeah, we will. We'll see. And it's, you mentioned Jalalov, and I was like, that's another reason I don't really care that much about amateur boxing.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
You can both now. Who fucking cares? The lines are so blurred. It used to be that, and it's, you can get like, $250,000 for winning some of these amateur tournaments and stuff like that. It's like, well, it's not amateur at that point in time. It's a different professional sport.
But can you imagine? Can you imagine if you're from a certain country in the world, and the president rings you up and says, "Will you do me a favor? Will you just revert back to the amateurs, go and wear a vest, and represent us with distinction?" It would be a favor to me. Very few of these fighters are going to say, "No, I'm not going to do it," and that comes with a reward in itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, and especially a lot of the post-Soviet
Correct.
countries too.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So it's almost like it's the Cuban model, but we're going to really, really reward you. I mean, you ain't just going to get a new bike and a fridge. We're going to really reward you. So guys like Jalalov might have had the phone call saying, "Look, we want a gold medal. You're going to get that for us. Go back to the amateurs. I'll see it as a personal favour, and we'll look after you."
You know, what's interesting to see if a guy like Jalalov loses, though. Like that could definitely damage his confidence going back into the pros. So it's, I don't know. It's you're playing a little bit of playing with fire there at that point in time. You never know. I mean, I know that a lot of people think that he's like a head over heels favorite to win.
I do, yeah.
He's super heavyweight, isn't he?
Yeah, super heavyweight. And while we're talking about heavyweights, worth mentioning, Jack Marley won his opening bout against a Polish kid, Berencki. So Ireland don't have many heavyweights. They've got an Olympic heavyweight, and he's in through the second round. He won today. So going back to Jalalov, yeah, he's very good. He's a super heavyweight. And, you know, when you look at, for example, guys like Cesar La Cruz, he's won 2 Olympics. He knows the formula now. He knows how to do it. And he's won 5 world golds. How'd you beat that kid, mate? So you're against a Cuban heavyweight who's won 5 world golds, 4 Pan American golds, and 2 Olympic golds. How'd you beat that kid over 3 rounds? You don't dare.
No, not until they get over the hill.
No, you don't beat him. You don't beat him. It's another Felix Savon. It's another Stevenson. You're just not going to get round him. And it's the same with, for example, the light heavyweight, Arlen Lopez. He's already won the Worlds and he's won 2 Olympics and 3 Pan Americans.
Well, what's funny with some of those guys too, Des, is like you never find out when they're over the hill at the world level because the talent level is so deep at home that they'll lose at home, and that person at home is you don't see him at the Worlds again because they've been playing.
And there's a new monster.
That guy
there's a new monster on the there's a new monster on the conveyor belt. That's exactly how it works. Yeah, absolutely. But when you look at some of these guys that are, you know, in these Olympics, they've been full-time pros. They're like an Alexander Usyk. They go back to, they were 15, fighting world-class guys and winning the Europeans or the Pan Americans or the Worlds, or they got a bronze at a World. Then the next one they got a silver. The next one they got a gold. And they've just got the formula now. Now they get it. And it really is... it's a talent I really admire, the Olympic boxer. I really admire how good they are, how high achieving they are. But I do think it's now becoming quite marginalised and quite specific. So an Olympic boxer is an Olympic boxer, unless you get a monster like a Jalalov come along or a La Cruz, who's just big, heavy-handed, can fight, can punch, can box. It's like putting Lennox Lewis in the Olympics. It's a different ballgame.
It'll be interesting to see what happens as far as these Cuban fighters getting a chance to be pros now too. You know, a couple of them have a win here, a win there. They're not getting a lot of opportunity, but we'll see if that changes. You know, you'd have to think at some point in time they just decide, you know, that'd be kind of nice to have that money in our economy. Let's see what we could do here.
So like, I can't speak on Cuban boxers. You probably can, because you probably see Cuban boxers come over to parts of America, settle in, and you see how the culture, the lifestyle, and everything is probably just, it blows their mind. Now, I've not seen Cubans do that, but I have seen some really good Indian boxers or some African boxers come over to London, and the lifestyle just blows their mind. So I'll ask you the question, because you're closer to it than me. All these brilliant Cuban talents that have worked this system out, that can fight, can box, and they are talented, incredibly talented. What is it that happens to them when they land in America, Matty?
You know, I'm not like, if I lived in Florida, I think I would be able to give you like a more on the ground opinion of it. But what was interesting for me is like sometimes there's YouTube channels for everything, right? And there's a YouTube channel where like they were taking like Cubans around when they first get here and just to like American places, and they take them like to a grocery store and they ask them like, well, what's this? You know, they tell them it's butter, it's mantequilla, and they're like, and what's this? That is also butter, and this also butter. The idea like you have choice in butter, it's not just butter. It's you know, it kind of blows their minds. And so you also have to think in the idea of they have money, they have freedom. A lot of these guys, what's kind of fucked up is that like they have families back in Cuba, but who's gonna say shit? So they're surrounded by all these women, especially like there's a place like Miami with all the people that speak Spanish down there. They could interact.
Yeah, that's
with
right. It's home from home, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, not just the Cubans, but I mean, you think about Colombians and Venezuelans. I mean, there's gorgeous women down there. Like everywhere you freaking look, there's a 10 anywhere else. But in South Florida, it's an 8, or she's an 8. I shouldn't say it. That's pretty rude, but yeah. So I think it's, that's the thing about the you have to kind of give credit to the Soviet system, the Cuban system, and those command economies, because they make that their life, and they take a little bit better care of them than they take care of, everyone else, because they got a little bit of stature in the society. So it keeps them on point. But when they're here and they get a little bit of money and they just think, oh, it's going to keep coming in, like they just life changes. There's no one to tell them how to live, what to do on a Saturday night. Do they have to do I have to wake up and go to the gym on a Tuesday morning?
No.
In
2012, I looked after. I helped out a few Cuban boxers, and I looked after Ronel Iglesias, Robsy Ramirez, and a couple of others. And another kid I looked out for was the big, phenomenal wrestler, the Greco wrestler, Mihan Lopez. And they were just focused on another planet. Like everything was about Cuba. Everything was about their family. Everything was about winning a gold medal. And you could see the mindset of a Cuban boxer. Now, having said that, the young one, and the one I thought was could have been turned, was a Robsy. And Robsy did defect. He did get over to Miami. And interesting enough, he lost his pro. I've been always following him. He lost his pro debut. And when you look at the guys Robsy beat in the amateurs, it's Shakur Stevenson, Mick Conlon, who's a kid we had here. He won 2 gold medals. He was a world champion. He was a phenomenal fighter. But he took his eye off the ball and lost his debut to a journeyman. I mean, and that's the disparity with sometimes with Cuban fighters. They go from being this absolute focused machine to someone that's now wearing big gold chains, designer hats, designer trainers, floating around on speedboats and living in someone else's apartment. And they're being told, all you've got to do now is box, but it's your rules now. You turn up to the gym and you train, and at night you go. And sometimes they go out at night and they have a night out and they have a few nights out. And before you know it, they're not the same person they used to be. They're not the person that won them gold medals. And I'm glad to see the Robsys turned it around. But he was a brilliant example of how you can fall from one end to the other if you don't get it right. They're very talented, but they work very hard for it.
Yeah, Robsy, I can see why you thought that he had it, because he the way that if he was fighting the way that he does now, vaguely in the amateurs, I mean, he sits down on his shots, and it's not just about scoring points. Like he actually throws shots with the purpose of hurting you. So,
he's learned that. He's learned that though, Matty. He's learned that. But I just at the time, you could, when you're around people, you think if anyone fancies a bit of pro boxing, if anyone fancies a little bit of their life, it would be Robsy, in a nice way. I mean.
Yeah, and we'll see how the rematch goes for him with Espinosa. That is definitely an interesting fight that is supposed to be made coming around the bend here. So, hey, Rob's here, right on. Well, before beep bop boop, I'm going to get to your question, but before I do that, one of my favorite people that's on the other side of the Atlantic, Mr. Rob Kelly. Rob, how are you today, sir?
What's going on, dog?
We're just chilling here, bullshit between the two of us. We were going to move on to Beep Bop Boop's question, but I guess perfect timing for you to show up before then. What were your thoughts on the weekend? And then we will wander on in.
Yeah, I thought it was like, there's 2 ways to look at it. You can look at it for British slugfest value delivered. It was a British slugfest, but in terms of quality and like what you're actually watching, I actually I found it difficult to watch. Like honestly, I just thought it was too guys that are completely shot, and that's why the fight played out the way it did. I thought Joyce had more left in the tank after the Cash Ali fight, which wasn't like super convincing, but I thought he'd have enough to put pressure on Chisora and stop him. Like, but even though there were signs that, like, there were some times that he did that. I mean, I remember saying on the pod years ago, like, about Josh Kelly, everyone was getting so excited about Josh Kelly hitting the guy with 3 left hooks. I was like, show me the fella that gets hit with 3 left hooks without ducking. Well, show me the fella that gets hit with 8 overhand rights and doesn't move like his head or put his hand up. But he's a strange guy, Joe Joyce, to watch. Like, no jab, but I thought, like, double the jab.
And he
like,
used to have a great jab. He fucking wrecked Dubois' eye with that jab.
Yeah, like, didn't put the jab out at all. Like, just short, jabbing from short, this jabbing from mid-range. It was a strange fight to watch. It was a tough one, I guess, on the cards.
It was strange, Robert. I mean, I said the same. And all Joyce, we love Derek and we appreciate what Derek is and what he brings to the table. But that wasn't a particularly good version of Derek Chisora last night. That was an old, slow. He would look gassed after 3 rounds.
That's what I'm saying.
He was there to be beat.
He was dead after 3 rounds with his 2 eyes closed. Then it was like he managed to hang in.
Why didn't Joe just give himself a bit of room and just use the jab all night? Derek couldn't hit him otherwise.
I just think he was like, I can't say he was like gun shy or whatever, but it seems like the way he engaged was so strange. Like the setup on the shots and everything was so, he was plodding. I think just Zhang wrecked him, hasn't it? Like, I don't want to be that black and white, but it looks like Zhang is just absolutely finished him compared to what he was. Because of, like, 2 years ago, Joyce was going to be the man. Like, and now it's like fucking, you can't see a way back from him. Like, if you're losing to Derek Chisora, this version of Derek Chisora, and you're in the top 10 of the heavyweights, like, Derek Chisora is the ultimate gatekeeper. He is what he is. He's good at selling British domestic fights. They all love him. They have a bit of a cult following. But I actually didn't think any joy in watching him getting shelled again last night. It's like, he's like, fuck, what do you want? You want the guy to die in the ring? I know he wants to have one more fight, but fucking, like, all these people around him and saying, oh, that's Derek's decision. And cool, get him in front of the fucking board. Like, how is he passing the medical at this stage? Like, I don't know. Like,
and Rob, we're talking about the fighting. Don't forget the 100 rounds of sparring he does in camp before that fight.
And he spars, doesn't he? Like, that's how he trains. Like,
he spars the way he fights. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Rob, I remember speaking to you the night after Zhilei Zhang, and we all kind of, and Andy was on the panel. We all said, "There's not Zhilei Zhang, the Cash Ali fight." We found that weird, and none of us thought that Joyce had 2 fights left in him. We said that on the back of the Zhilei Zhang ones and what we saw from Cash Ali, Joe Joyce don't win his next one. Not if it's anyone, not any credible opponent. And like we just discussed, this wasn't even a top version of Derek Chisora. This was an old, tired, gassed Derek Chisora after 3 rounds. And Joyce
the top version of Derek Chisora got beaten by Tyson Fury in the second fight and gave Vitaly a go. That's a long time ago. You know what I mean? And he's been hanging in there against guys. Like, he's got his big fights against Usyk, the fucking Dillian White fights, you name it. Like, he's there, he brings value, but he's the same thing, and it's just, he's diminishing each time. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, Fury carried him in the 3rd fight, no fucking doubt about it. Like, carried him and could have killed him. You know what I mean? It was just, I don't know, I can't. So I've gone around about the houses to say what I actually feel about this fight. I just think it was a good event for what it was. I'm astounded that many people bought tickets for it, and was that such a big fight at the O2 between them two at this stage of their careers. But the fight delivered, I guess, if you bought a ticket for it, because it was action-packed to a degree, had a certain level of drama. But I don't know, I felt sad watching it, to be honest with you. I thought it was like it was two guys with fucking 1.5 foot out of the sport, like, giving it the last hurrah. I didn't like it. Like,
it is interesting they sold so many tickets, Rob. I'm like kind of curious if like Chisora like told some of his right-wing friends that part of the ticket sales were going to go to deport people or something. Like, I don't know. Might have been some game on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, he knows, Chisora knows what he's doing. Like, he knows how to work the room. Do you know what I mean? And attract controversy and all that. Like,
he does. Yeah. If anything, he knows how to sell a fight. God love Del Boy. Let's see here. Also joining us, my wonderful fill-in host last week. Thank you very much, Mr. Eamon Khan from Seconds Out. Ames, how are you doing, my friend? Thanks again for stepping in there. We do appreciate that and your dedication to the podcast.
Pleasure is all mine. Thanks for giving me the hot seat. It was a little bit too warm, Matt. I don't know how long you've been sitting on that seat for, but I made it my own for that one moment.
So what were you, before we move on, do you have any thoughts that you could add about this weekend of fights? It was definitely exceeded expectations, I think, is a reasonable way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't one for the boxing purists at all. But if you're into those slugfest type of fights, it was exactly what you wanted. And to be fair, like there was a worry going into it that this could be a real kind of sloppy snooze fest kind of affair, and it didn't end up being that one. It's a real fight that you could watch back. I just thought, just adding on to what Rob was saying there, I thought for me, Joe fought like a man who was convinced he was, or at least the end for Chisora was 2 or 3 punches away. And in that, he then forgot to set up those 2 or 3 punches to find that finish. He got sloppy. He didn't give himself room to find that finish. He closed the distance for Derek. You want to see Joyce in that situation kind of just extend his punches out more, and he just give himself more kind of room to maneuver and set things up, and he just didn't do it. And I don't know if that comes from instruction from Salas, who has been tremendously loyal to it for a long time, alongside having, I think, Steve Broughton in the corner, or if it's just a lack of capability at this point for Joe, whose coordination at points in the fight, I think it was round 9 or 10 where he literally just fell. I've watched it back on the highlights. I can't get my head around how he literally he fell like, I don't know, someone turned the computer off at the mains and quickly put it back on. But yeah, Joyce has got to be kicking himself off the back of, and some of it will be his management maybe made the error in moving to fight Zhang, where maybe they could have waited, but he was a stone's throw away from getting that world title opportunity. Now to lose to Chisora, it's a real kind of look in the mirror type of moment. For Joyce's credit, it was good to see him address the media, and he wasn't shying away from that. I think he said as much as like he's not going to shut the door on his career. And for someone like him as well, now you got to really kind of, if you're going to let him continue, you've really got to match him right to maybe build that confidence back. Although he didn't look like an unconfident fighter to me. His knockdown, I thought, was more of he got caught square a little bit. The punch was a good punch. It wasn't.
Oh, it was a peach. It was a peach, especially when you're on shaky legs. That was a shot.
But I feel like there's more of a, again, like, whilst his balance I don't think is great, it was also just like a little bit of a balance situation for Joe. But yeah, look, he's a nice guy, very likable guy. I just feel like he's really got to be matched properly, and maybe kind of go back to what got him into the dance in the first place, and just be a bit more front foot, be a bit more like the Dubois fight was his best performance, and it was a real jab affair for quite a lot of that fight. But that's what set up his.
And he was 25 pounds lighter, Ames.
Yeah, he was. But that was his greatest success, and I think he's just thrown that away against a fighter that him and his team must have thought they were going to get rid of within 4 or 5 rounds.
Yeah, it definitely was a little bit of a surprise. But Beep Bop Boop threw in a super chat there, and God love him. I wouldn't have thought about this unless somebody had asked me to address it for money. So here we are. So he says, thoughts on Joyce versus Wilder, or Huey or White. Thoughts on Joyce versus Wilder and Huey versus White. God, I would be shocked to see either of those happen. Wilder versus Joyce. God, I think I get the hunch that they'd both be afraid to let their hands go, and it would be awful to watch.
Matty, Joyce versus Wilder was in the pipeline. That was something that was a fight that was wanted to be made beforehand. I think since Wilder lost to Parker, that then was shelved. But that was, and that still could be actually an idea that they go forward with, considering they could then market the winner off of that as being one of them back. Joe's back to being the juggernaut by stopping Wilder, or Wilder's back to being the destructive one-punch knockout artist because Joyce couldn't get out of the way.
And he will not be able to get out of the way. We know that for sure. My hunch on that one is that probably Wilder catches him just because Joyce is so easy to catch. If there's anything that could make you confident, it would be that guy in front of you. What are your so where do you think that one would go, Des? If you had just on a hunch, who would you go with?
Oh, it's like a race to the bottom, though. This, isn't it?
It really is.
Joyce v Wilder and Huey v White. Joyce don't ever win another fight again. Joyce is done. If you're not beating that version of Derek Chisora, you can't win another fight at any sort of level. I think if Joyce was to box David Adelaide beats him. I think Fabio Waldy beats Joyce. I think Fraser Clark beats Joyce. I think Dave Allen and Joyce is a good fight. And the reason I say that is because Cash Ali made Joyce really work hard and think and look bad. I think Joyce is cooked. He's done. And I don't take pleasure in saying that. I'm not one of these disrespectful guys. I appreciate what Joe Joyce has done. He's been a very high achiever. I just think for whatever reason, David Price-esque, I've seen it in Wilder, I've seen it in Riddick Bowe, heavyweight fighters just fall off a cliff at some time, and he's fallen off a cliff. So I don't think Joyce wins any fight. And as regards to Huey and White, I've given up on Huey Fury. I've just given up on him. It's been so long and he's so inactive, and I don't know what version is going to turn up, and it's normally not a very good one. So why wouldn't White beat him?
Yeah, I don't know, Rob. I think the problem is that Huey never got his man strength.
Yeah, it's has such a strange career. I think they maybe rushed him a little bit. I think the Parker fight, he'll look back on in years to come. I think he should have maybe won that fight if he'd have stepped on the gas a little bit. There was he let Parker back into the fight. If he'd have let his hands go even fractionally, he probably could have nicked that on the cards. And then look where the two of them went. Obviously, Parker was a world champion, having beaten Andy Ruiz to win the belt, and then obviously loses to AJ or whatever, and then has this kind of Indian summer that he's had recently under Andy Lee, and then Huey Fury's just gone from fights that he should have fucking he had expected him to win. He just hadn't got it at the time. I just think they came too early for him. I think the Joe Parker, the Pulev, he probably needed another 4 or 5, 6, 7 fights to get to that level. And if like I said to you, if he'd have won the Joe, I don't think he would have been a long reigning, but things certainly would have gone differently. I think he obviously he's had his illness and stuff as well. And yeah, I'm a bit like Days. I'm checked out of it. I like Peter Fury. I like Huey Fury as a fighter. When I first saw him, when he was first 10 fights, I thought he had really, really good technique and everything. Looked like he could bang a bit. But he just hasn't looked. He hasn't been in the kind of profile fight since, and he hasn't looked explosive at all as a heavyweight. So I don't think Huey Fury's going to cut it as a top heavyweight. He obviously still has time on his side and everything to get it up there, maybe get himself into a big fight. But how many more times are you going to see Huey's name on a card, and then you're like, oh, this got to be the one that he kicks on from here, that way? It's just like they said, too much inactivity, and just under delivered on the promise of what he was, what people were thinking he was going to be at the start.
Yeah, well, and I mean, when the expectations for you in the beginning was people saying, "Oh, he's better than Tyson." Yeah, I mean that's a freaking, no pun intended. That's a tall bill right there. That's a lot to put on a kid when he's 18. My God. So
tell you what, though, at the time, Tyson, when they were comparing the two of them on the up, Tyson was still probably fighting on Channel 5, and he wasn't really taking the sport serious. He was heavy. He looked fucking.
That might have been. That might have been around the time of the Cunningham fight when he was, getting
he got dropped by Cunningham, got dropped by Pikich. He had the Terry McDermott thing. There's a Terry McDermott, the McDermott decision and stuff so. People weren't really rating Fury highly. Everyone was. A lot of people thought David Price was the fucking, including Tony Bellew. But a lot of people at the time would have said maybe Huey is the better one. But obviously it hasn't played out like that. But at the time, I remember that. Fury had a lot of detractors in the early stages.
Yeah, punching himself in the face and stuff. Yeah. But anyhow, Ames, any thoughts on these two potential fights that Beat Bop Boop believes are worth addressing? I tell you, he's among the greatest of the nutters. He is a sick man.
Most likely, I reckon that a real last throw of the dice that Joe Joyce versus Wilder fight might happen. It's literally a 50-50 toss-up between whoever one kind of can exert their plan. I'd probably say that maybe Joyce weighing more so on the heavier side of things might actually play in his favor, having seen how Zhang was able to just walk through Wilder's big famed right hand. Hughie Fury versus Dylan White. I don't know. You'd probably favour Dylan White over anything with Hughie. Like I know Peter's always kind of talked about Hughie having long COVID, and you just wonder how when Hughie kind of gets into one of these type of fights between someone who's contended for a world title and has probably a little bit left, how that will affect him, how that will kind of carry through. If I know that athletes have had to retire because they've not been able to deal with the effects that have never been the same from it. So we can't really kind of really tell where Hughie Fury actually is at this point. But it's never a fight that I would ever see Dylan entertain, really, because I don't think he probably sees Hughie as one of those fighters that kind of brings a large payday alongside it, or the spotlight they'd be looking for, unless it was for some sort of gateway into getting into one of the fragmented titles. But those two have got a long way to kind of put themselves in a position, and Dylan's still got to worry about getting licensed in anywhere other than Ireland at the moment.
Yeah, true story on that one. So, but thanks, Bebop. We appreciate you very much there, sir, and for kicking that in for us very much. Let's see here. We are going to go and start previewing. We'll go kind of in chronological. Got a pro box.
Rob can license him in Mexico.
What's that?
Rob can license him in Mexico.
There you go. Rob, why don't you become a promoter? What are you doing with your life? He doesn't even feel the need to address that. I can appreciate that. Wednesday, there's a pro box card. It's going to be Alberto Palmetta against Jesus Saracho in the main event. I like that fight. Emiliano Moreno undefeated against Rashield Williams. 2 defeats on his ledger. Jonathan Navarro, 17-0, taking on Clarence Booth, who used to be a pretty decent test, but he's on a really bad run lately. We'll see if he can flip that around and actually give somebody a good contest this go around. But that'll be Wednesday on Pro Box. Let's see here. Then we got a Saturday DAZN card kicking off here. We're going to have a fight. I think this might be a rematch between Tyrone McKenna and Muhammad Mamoun. Then Cayman Edyarko. Ha, Rob, got it. Cayman Edyarko against Tommy. I'm not even going to try
again. Wrong
still. Fuck it. I'm not going to try his opponent. His first name is Tommy. I'm not going to embarrass myself. There's a lot going on there. Consecutive ends. I have no idea. I'm not even going to address it. Undefeated against 12-4. You got 9-0 Fergus Quinn against Aston Brown, who is currently sitting at a 6-0 mark. So that's not a terrible card going on there in Northern Ireland. Anyone have any thoughts on that one?
Only I've got a soft spot for Mohammed Mamoun because it was the worst decision I've ever seen. Yeah, I think it's the worst decision I've ever seen given to a fighter when he boxed Tyrone McKenna in that tournament set format. So I don't think Mohammed's been particularly active. I think it kind of he stagnated since that result. But I'd love to. I've got nothing against Tyrone McKenna, but I'd love to see Mohammed get something back, even as little as it is. I'd like him to get something back next week in Belfast.
Yeah, Matty, Tyrone's last outing, he offered very little against Lewis Crocker. He kind of just shelved up for the 10 rounds and he threw punches back, really, but he wasn't able to keep Crocker off of him. And, you know, if he'd kind of opened up a little bit more, maybe a proud man like McKenna was wary that he might end up having to take a knee and, you know, not finishing the fight. And he really seemed to want to get to that final bell, and it was supposed to be, I believe, the final bell for him. And I think he's been coaxed into having one more crack at it against Mamoun. Rematch for that MTK golden contract. Don't know what was golden about it because it never led to any real opportunity for a fighter. I don't even know if there was a contract for it either. But that was the opportunity that was at hand there for him. And Mamoun was on the end of a real bad decision there by the judges. So I haven't kept track of Mamoun's career at all, to be fair. So I don't know how much he has left between the two. It's only like three fights since, so he hasn't been the most active himself. But yeah, this will probably be Tyrone's final official, I guess, curtain call.
What killed him against after Tyrone McKenna aims was he was inactive for 2 years. Then he went out to America and fought Cesar Francis, who was a 9-0 prospect. never got it there either. And then he was inactive for almost over another year. So he's always been given the prospect. He's always been put in the away corner. He's never had any favours off any judges. But I remember that night because it was an absolute. I mean, the whole place was gutted and sad, and we all felt a little bit ashamed that boxing had done this to a kid, because he was by far and away the winner of that Tyrone McKenna fight. So he's had a very slow career since. It's been very stagnated. It's been stop-start, loads of inactivity. It'd been nice if he can go and get something in Belfast, just a little something for his own personal career achievement, because I think he deserves it.
All right, and that one is going to be this weekend on DAZN. Probably going simultaneously, going to be a card on Sky. Pick your poison, whatever you want to watch.
So, just on that card in Belfast, by the way, there's a young Wexford pro who's having his second fight. His name is Dean Anthony Gonzalez Furlong. So I know the family, and I met him the other day actually in the shop with Fred Buhor, who won 4 All Ireland's amateurs, and his dad as well. His dad is actually half Spanish from Wexford, but he would have grown up kind of half here and half over there. But he's on the Conlon card anyway, making I think it's his second fight, and I think he's fighting out welterweight. So one to look out for. They gave him the nickname Speedy Gonzalez Furlong. I thought that was good. So keep an eye out for him.
How would the Gad go about pronouncing that one?
Gonzalez. And he would then have to go Wexford and go Furlong afterwards, so it'll be difficult. This young fella could probably make a lot of money in that, like good looking kid and everything. He's marketable for sure, and it remains to be seen what he's like. But yeah, best of luck to him.
Born in Wexford, lives in Torrevieja. Is that right?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. What a nice life.
I tell you, I know which one I'd rather be living in.
Now it's going to have a card going on Sky that's going to be going on, let's see here, from the Oakwell football ground. Oh boy, Zach Shelley against Callum Simpson, currently undefeated. Caroline Dubois taking on once defeated Mayra Moneo. Stephen McKenna against Joe Laws. Connor Coyle against once defeated Kyle Lamote. All right. Ames, tell me something about this card that I don't know from looking at BoxRec.
Yeah, no problem. I was looking forward to maybe going to Barnsley, to be fair. I've never been before, so I was quite excited to go somewhere completely new. And then a couple of people within the media industry said to me, Ames, it's probably not somewhere someone like yourself might want to go. You probably won't be welcomed quite nicely.
That's fucked, man. That's fucked.
So I won't be going to Barnsley myself personally. Maybe it's not the case anyways. But yeah, no.
Apparently not a great bunch of lads. We'll find out.
Who knows? Yeah, a couple of good talents there. I guess they're sort of like prospects kind of making their last port of call before they get into real kind of contendership. Caroline Dubois, real good talent. She can be someone who can really kind of take over and be a leading light. You just wonder when she's going to get that opportunity. She's captured the IBO title. She said herself, like she kind of feels it's a world title, but she doesn't feel like a world champion kind of yet. And she's, a stone's throw away from that. She's battling for the interim title and she's expected to come through with that. McKenna versus Laws. Look, Laws can talk a good game and talk himself into a good opportunity, but McKenna's got too much in the locker there, and I expect that to finish before the final bell. Otherwise, like it's kind of more a prospecty type of show. Zach Shelley and Callum Simpson. Like Callum, boxers seem to really like Callum. They seem to think he can be one of these fighters who they can mold and cultivate into someone who can kind of lead the northern area of the UK off the back of the likes of Kell Brook in a similar sort of area of Sheffield, like falling off and being out of contention now. They feel like Callum is probably that guy and they can build him right. And I feel like Zaki kind of blows hot and cold, a little bit too in love with his power and being able to hurt people and stop people. And he's had some real good finishes both inside the ring and out. I remember once there was a clip of him sparring Johnny Walker, the MMA fighter, and absolutely flattening him. And he's kind of dined off of that, both within some of the fans and then himself thinking that. But then he also kind of falls in love with a little bit of being able to box as well too much when his skills are to kind of look to land that big punch. And to be fair, he did back himself against Sims Jr. and he got a good win there where a lot of people would have fancied Sims Jr. He's a bit of a character himself. And
Such
also,
an ugly fight, though. My God.
Yeah, it was.
He probably should have been penalized for holding on that because the way he was going about his business was absurd.
Yeah, no, it wasn't great at all. I expect Callum Simpson to come through this fight. He could even, step on the gas and maybe kind of get that first big stoppage against Chelly's record there, and then it'll probably be onwards and upwards for Callum Simpson. But for Boxer like to really kind of push this and this to be like in the Oakwell Stadium for Barnsley, they're really kind of putting the gust behind Callum Simpson, and hopefully it pays off for him. He's a good kid. He's a good kid as well. Sorry, I should say he's been up sparring with Artur Beterio. I think him, Dan Aziz had been up there, so they were being trusted to be used and help guide Artur to, I think, when he was getting ready to take on Anthony Yard. So he's pulled experiences from the top of the division ahead in light heavyweight. So yeah, I think he's a good talent. I just don't know how good he is just yet. I don't think he's one of those. He's not been fast tracked by any means, but they might have someone in their hands there.
Des, do you have any thoughts on this card? Des, do you have any thoughts on this card? I don't know if you're on. There you are.
I think very similar to Ames. I think Simpson beats Chelly. I think Chelly's, although he's a British champion, I think he's one of the bottom tier British level fighters, and to hold that belt. And I think if Simpson's got as much about him as they say, I think he'll have too much for Zach. I think Zach's just getting in the habit of getting over the line as well, and that type of habit catches you out against an ambitious kid fighting for his first title. I like Caroline Dubois. I think she's brilliant. I think she's a really good female boxer. And
she's got some charisma too. I think that's really important.
She can fight.
Trying to grow the sport.
And she can fight. And she's in a good gym with a good camp. She's around winners. Who's the third fighter? I know Joe Laws. No, I like Stephen Kenner. I think he's a good fighter. He's got a lot about him. I think he's had, is it 15 now, stop 14, or 14, stop 13. I think I'd like to see him get going. I think he beats Joe Laws, but I'd like to see him kick on now. I'd like Sky to give him the real push. I think he's a talent.
This card could use that, Matty. This card could have used that a little bit more. It feels like it's missing one at least more, because it's basically kind of just a rung and a half better than a next gen card. Really, it needed something a little bit more for me. It needed like a Natasha Jonas kind of thing, a little bit of British kind of star power, a Savannah Marshall, something along those lines. Just something a little bit extra, I think. Adam Azim versus Harlem Eubank or something like that. That sort of kind of level of a fight.
That would have been perfect, yeah. That would have been
was
perfect.
needed in this card, especially off the back of like that Mag 7. If let's say the Mag 7 card had gone ahead as it was intended to be, to then go into Chisora versus Joyce, which had good fights on that undercard too. It's a real good run when they went into the actual kind of televised portion of the fight, to then Boxer kind of look at the landscape and then offer this up. I think they've kind of missed out an opportunity to keep the momentum going, and they've not quite fulfilled the offering for boxing fans. I think the value there.
To your previous point, though, as I look at this card, and I understand the number of prospects you have with names that weren't common to the UK a couple of generations ago. And is there nobody on this card with an Arab name or any sort of Middle Eastern, Pakistani name? This card is, I can kind of see some signs pointing to what you said earlier, actually, in all honesty. So, yeah, that might be why there's not this, that, and the other on there. But
in the old days, Matty, when Sky was really pushing boxing and the sun was shining, this would have been on a Wednesday night. This would have been like a small hall, a Next Generation show, Wednesday night, and it would have been a nice midweek thing. It seems a bit weak for a Saturday evening.
It seems like it's like the main fights should be chief support for something. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm with Ames, and Natasha Jonas or Adam Azim would have been brilliant for this.
Yeah. Well, here's the good news, guys. Here's the good news for you. Say you're getting tired of that card. Well, you know what's going to be happening at about 5 o'clock Eastern time? Well, that's going to be the start of the card from Los Angeles. Yeah, it's getting that. It's going to be a while going on, so they'll be getting it going early. We're going to work our way up towards the main event here. Let's see here. Let's start with the big boys first. Rob, I got 2 heavyweight fights for you. We got Jared Anderson against Martin Bacoli. You can close that GoFundMe down, Mr. Bacoli. You're getting your payday, sir. As well as Andy Ruiz against our friend Fat Gerald Miller, the car thief. And Andy Ruiz, who got kicked out of his house by his wife. A lot of fuckery going on here, Rob. But will there be good fights in these two?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, what size is Bacoli going to be when he gets on Fight Night? Is he in good nick now? Like,
I don't know. How much money did he make on GoFundMe?
I don't know. He was around 270 at one stage, wasn't he? The last time I think I seen him. Last time I cared anyway. I know they've been trying to. You could say that Bacoli's been a bit unfortunate for the guy. He kind of has had some British heavyweights around him with bigger backings, bigger platforms, maybe make a ton of a lot more money than him, and he feels a little bit aggrieved because he probably feels he's as good as a Derek Chisora, a Dillian White, or maybe even a Daniel Dubois, and he hasn't had the fights to show it. This is a chance for him to expose the myth of Jared Anderson. So maybe he'll do it. Like, I don't know if he's had the right level of opposition, if he's in good enough nick to go and do it. But I don't like that guy. I have question marks over that guy anyway. So I think maybe Bacoli could put a bit of pressure on him. He might be able to do something. It's certainly a big opportunity for him, and good for him. Like, hope he gets a few quid out of it. The other heavyweight fight between Jared Miller and Andy Ruiz, isn't it? Like, the guy who fucking fumbled the bag and the guy who had the bag and fucking blew it. Like, fucking two idiots. Like, for their outside of the ring activity, but two good fighters. Like, I think any kind of version of Andy Ruiz should beat any version of Big Baby Miller. I think Ruiz was actually a class act, but just didn't live the life. Like, he won the big fucking. He hit the lottery in the AJ fight, and then he did the Buster Douglas. He Buster Douglas himself out of big fights down the line by ballooning up in weight, coming to the ring like fucking John Fisher for the AJ rematch. He should have beaten Joshua the second time if he had been right. Like, if he had been in the same shape or better than he was in the first time, and he had no excuses because the first time he was a late replacement. The second time he could have had a full camp and looked amazing and gone and done a job on Joshua, but he wasn't able. He was that fat and out of shape. He wasn't even able to put punches together, even when AJ was boxing on the back foot. The couple of times he clipped him, he looked like he did catch his attention. But he gave us one of the greatest nights we've ever had in terms of upsets, and on the pod here as well, especially.
Yeah, he's been out of the ring for 2 years, though, is the tough thing. I mean, just a month shy of 2 years. It's pretty crazy.
I'm wondering, was he serving some kind of ban in the background because his name, or was he just waiting it out for a big fight? He kind of believed his own ego. I think he was doing he was living La Vida Loca outside the ring, wasn't he, as well, with the women and that. Like, so that's never, you know what I mean? It's not a good combination, like, when you're a prize fighter. But I think he's but don't take my prediction. I thought Joe Joyce was going to beat Derek Chisora, so I don't know, like, with these bums, what's going to happen. I think Andrew Ruiz is a long way off a shot back. But he has more than Big Baby Miller, I think.
Yeah, and we've been waiting for Anderson to fight somebody who was a legit contender, and I honestly think that this is one of the best fights on the card, Des.
Yeah, I like it. I think Bacoli beats him. I'm not overly certain about Anderson. I know he's the American prospect, but we've seen loads of them. And I've not seen enough from Anderson at the level he's boxed at to suggest to me that he's the ticket. The Charles Martin was a big red flag for me. I thought Charles Martin boxed really well that night. And if we'd had maybe another 10-15% out of Charles, I think he'd have caught Anderson out. So I like Bacoli. I think Bacoli's one of them guys he's travelled around. He's relocated from Africa over to Europe, settled in Scotland. He's got a formula that works for him. He's found a rhythm. When he got beat by who's the American? He got beat by Hunter. He got straight back on the saddle. He had 4 fights in the next 12 months, and he really put that to bed. And it's been a bit slow for him since then. But his wins have been good wins. He's beaten fighters they didn't expect him to beat. They didn't expect him to beat Yoko. They didn't expect him always necessarily to beat Carlos Takam, although Takam was on the down as well. But they're good wins. And I think McCulley's at the right space to make a statement. And I think he's got the right guy to do it against. I agree with Rob, with Andy Ruiz. That night, the second one against AJ, I can't ever remember. I don't think there'll ever be another example where a heavyweight title, the undisputed or unified title, can change hands with such a negative, scared performance from the winner. AJ was awful that night, and Andy Ruiz let that one go. If he turns up, he should beat Gerald Miller. I'm not overly keen on Gerald Miller, but he did impress me against Daniel Dubois. When I say impress me, he had a good engine. He was there till about round 8. And it was only in the last 2 rounds Dubois pulled away from him.
If he comes in better shape, if he looks better on the scales, I think he's worth backing for a few bucks. Because I mean, Ruiz being out of the ring for almost 2 years. I mean, Miller. I mean, for everything against him, at least he's been active, legal troubles included,
and a good active too. He got a really good workout against Dubois. That was a really good fight. He'd have learned a lot from it. He'd have had a lot more faith in his fitness and his tank going in the second half of a fight. I still think Andy Ruiz should beat him because I'm not overly keen on Gerald Miller. I don't think he's a talent. I think Andy Ruiz is a talent, but it all depends on what version of Andy Ruiz turns up. So I'm going to go for Bacoli to upset Anderson and Ruiz to beat Miller.
Excellent. Let's see here. What else do we have on there? Let's see here. Let's go with the 2 Cruzes.
Whoa. Where are you going, Matty? Where are you going?
I was going to go with you with the 2 Cruzes.
Nah, I'll go to the Cruzes in a second. Just with the Bacoli. Look, for me, I feel like Bacoli he does have the hardcore mind and hardcore support from the boxing fans here, but I think he's really kind of not quite thrown himself really 2 foot in to really kind of win the full support of like the hardcore audience. He hasn't done it like a Kiko Martinez did it, or in a way where Babic sort of caused intrigue with his fights because he characterized himself. I think he's kind of missed opportunities to really kind of get the full kind of motion of support from the hardcore audience who really want to like push him to be in these big fights. And I think he's kind of forced that issue now in climbing the ladder, and he's getting that opportunity again. And he's got that. He can get that. He can do it right the second time round and really kind of get everyone in his favor. I think as well, like he's been trivialized a bit too. He's been made a bit of a joke as well. This whole sparring story, and he seems to stop everyone sparring and stuff. And it shouldn't have been allowed to become a joke. That sort of thing is supposed to be a bit of a rumor or a bit of a whisper in the air that gives concern to a fighter in the opposite corner or intrigue to a fan. Like, who is this guy? Who is this fighter? Like, I've got to watch him. Why is he doing this? Like, I think like there's been a bit of a misstep there to allow him to become like a little bit of a funny joke there. But it's good to see that he's finally kind of showing that he is that level of fighter. I'm quite intrigued, to be fair, that from the decision of Jared Anderson's team to choose Martin Bacoli over the other option that I was aware of, which was Jermaine Franklin. And I would have thought that they would have seen Bacoli as a tougher fight to Franklin, but I think they've gone the other way, and they thought maybe that Franklin would be tougher stylistically, or maybe the money was different. But
I think Franklin's got a good reputation in America in the gyms.
Yeah, I think that's part of it as well too. Of course, as well with the volume that Franklin throws at and punches at, good defense, and then never really shown his chin to crack either. And then Bacoli having that loss on his record and to Michael Hunter, I think they've seen, with a bit of sweet science sprinkled here and there, that Jared Anderson can kind of come through maybe a one-dimensional looking Martin Bacoli.
Yeah, totally.
A heavier set Martin Bacoli. So I think that's the gamble over someone like Jermaine Franklin that they've gone for there. But Jared Anderson has got a lot left to show. He's lost a lot of, goodwill with some of the outside behaviors heading into a fight like this. So he's got a lot to prove. When you've got, and I know like Fury as well also been trivialized because he says one thing and then says another. But when you've got the likes of Tyson Fury, who's been leading the heavyweight division for years, who've really said, look, Jared Anderson, he's going to be the guy who's going to take over. You've really got to kind of back that up. So he has to put on a big performance. Otherwise, he's going to get relegated off these Saudi cards as well. And I wonder where the appetite will be for boxing fans or his promoter to keep pushing him if he's not going to deliver in that sense. The other way I see, are you guys saying that what you feel that Miller's going to beat Ruiz?
No, they seem to think that Ruiz was going to beat Miller.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I must have misheard
I have concerns with Ruiz being almost 2 years out of the ring. That's especially with the fighter that's reflex oriented.
If these images are true of what's been circling around about Jarrell Miller, I'd also have concerns about whether Jarrell Miller is fully reformed or not. I hope that is the case, and I hope that the testing is in place to make sure that Jarrell Miller hasn't slipped either, and that's all been above board. But
does he look in good shape?
He looks in incredible shape if the images I've seen are to believe to be true. We'll see that on Fight Week, I guess. But I fancy here Andy Ruiz to return back to some real good form, and I think he might, because of the way they both fight. Miller throwing loads of punches, not to the level he was beforehand, but still, that's his style. That's what he knows. That's his wheelhouse. That's bread and butter for someone like Andy Ruiz, whose best moments have been when he's been countering off of the gaps that you leave, and there's no real big defense there. That was a fighter who in the Dubois fight, Dubois started a little bit earlier, maybe had a bit more in the tank there than he would have finished Jarrell Miller a little bit earlier. I think there's a real opportunity for Jarrell to get a little bit lax and find himself open for a big counter and to be knocked out or stopped here. That's what I'm going with. I think Ruiz looks real good in a fight against Jarrell Miller and moves forward to another big opportunity.
Well, and so it'll be interesting to see those fights again. I think Bacoli Anderson is going to be one of the better fights in the card now. Also on this one, we got a couple of Cruzes. We got Andy Cruz in his fourth professional fight taking on Antonio Moran, who has definitely fought a good number of the better fighters around the lightweight division. Only been stopped once. That was by Devin Haney. And then you're going to have Isaac Cruz taking on Jose Valenzuela. Valenzuela, we probably would best remember from his two fights recently with Chris Colbert, where he just beat the snot out of Colbert the second time around and probably got the raw end of the decision the first time on that one, even though two of my favorite judges are on that one. We won't even say their names, though. God love them. But yeah, so this could be an exceptional fight here. This is at 140 pounds. Both of these guys' work have been mostly done at 135, but Cruz picked up that belt at 140. Rob went on and he disappeared and he's back. Des, what are you thinking about this with these two fights, separate fights with the Cruzes?
I think it's a keep busy fight for Isaac. He beats Venezuela and he's in a very competitive division. I think he'll have a big fight coming up. But I think this is a keep busy fight. Andy Cruz really excites me. I think it's a brilliant bit of matchmaking by his team. They must really fancy him. Moran's had a lot of experience, had an awful lot of fights. I think he gets beat. I think Andy Cruz is that good. But this is the type of matchmaking I want to see from our top prospects. Andy Cruz is a top prospect, and this is how you match him. This is a good bit of matchmaking. Andy Cruz will earn an awful lot Saturday night. This is the sort of fights he wants to be in.
Well, if he can produce a stoppage against a guy that's only been stopped once against that kind of level of competition, that is going to be quite the statement there.
But whether you're Keyshaw Davis, whether you're Andy Cruz, if you're a top prospect, you've had fantastic amateurs, you've learned it all in the amateurs. You don't need to relearn it. You just need to just tweak it a bit. Andy Cruz is being tweaked. He's a good fighter, and this is a brilliant bit of matchmaking.
Yeah, it's just a matter of following him and seeing when how he goes the levels here. He's probably just 1-2 fights away from a title if he comes through this one. So it'll be exciting for him. I
The
I do
skill, the skill here, Matty, is not rushing it. It's a bit like Moses. We want to get it just right. We don't want to do it too quick. We don't want to get him there too soon because once you're there, you can't come back. But we want to make sure the first 10 fights, the first 12 fights are just polishing up, tweaking him up, just getting him where he needs to be, and then we can let him off the leash. And then it's about picking the right world champions in the right division.
I don't think they're going to go 10 fights for him before he gets a title. I think it's going to be much sooner than that. But we'll see. I mean, it's just checking him out as he goes up here. Ames, are you thinking the same as Dez that Cruz and Valenzuela is a foregone conclusion? I kind of thought that that Valenzuela might have a bit to offer Cruz in the way that he fights, because I think he can kind of do a little bit of God, why can't I remember his damn name? Just lost to William Zepeda. Do a little bit of what he did, except he can do it with some pop. He's a little bit of a lanky guy, and he swings hard. I think if there's an upset between these two fights, I would think that it's going to be Valenzuela over Isaac Cruz.
Oh yeah, like that's. I hear your point that you're making there, Matty. He's very much like a capable type of fighter, and although for me, I feel like Chris Colbert was one of those who flattered to deceive. He talked a good game. He was always brash and confident. As he climbed the ladder, he just kind of seemed to falter, and that was to Valenzuela's gain, as well as being able to, like you said, he's got that pop in his punches. He's been able to finish his fighters early. He's been able to hurt his fighters throughout fights as well too. I feel the Colbert fights sort of flatter him a little bit, and someone like Isaac Cruz, the way he fights as well too, I don't think he's going to take a backward step. I don't think he's going to be able to give, he won't. Valenzuela will have to think too much about covering himself up to be able to kind of throw what he's good at, to be able to land his big shots, and I think he's going to overwhelm Isaac Cruz here. The other outside worry here, and I don't think it'll be now in this fight, but just the way in some of the images you see of Isaac Cruz and the weight that he kind of carries outside of camps and outside of his fights after he gets his successes in the ring, he seems to enjoy those moments, and he puts the pounds on. When will I know this is obviously a higher weight here, but when will that catch up to him? And will it be a capable fighter like Valenzuela that might be able to catch him in one of those camps that don't go quite too well, where they had to crash a little bit more weight than they did previously, where he's took his eye off the ball? I don't think it'll be this weekend coming, but that's always one to keep in the back of the mind with someone like Cruz, who doesn't quite live the life in that sense outside of the fight camps.
Well, the thing about it is about Cruz is, when he looks good, he looks really good. But a good number of fighters have ran him close. Even in defeat. There you go. Cabrera had the split decision loss to him on there. Let's see here. It's Francisco Vargas. Now that one wasn't fight. Let's see. Well, there you go. The majority. Thomas Matisse had the majority decision over them. That was a close fight, I remember. But it's, he is a shorter fighter, so I feel like it all depends on how people might use the ring against him. I think in this pair of fights, this one is going to be the best fight of the two, and could definitely be one of the better ones on the card as well. So let's see here. Rob, did you have anything to say about the Cruzes?
I think both will cruise to victory. How do you like that one?
There you go. That was just teed up for you there, and you just swung away. I appreciate that. Let's see here. And this last one we got here before we'll discuss the main event. I think this is one of the easiest ones to pick. I think this is a clear knockout and probably early. David Morell taking on Hot Rod Kalajdzic. Kalajdzic looked okay coming back, but he's he's definitely a limited fighter, pretty predictable. Morell just knows how to find the holes, find the angles, and Ames. I think this one is a foregone conclusion. I think this Morell probably has the easiest fight of anyone that we have discussed so far tonight.
Yep, not much too much to add there, Matty. I think you're right here. Should be a routine victory, looking good victory for David Morell, who looking for those big fights there with like Belanga getting the big fights, Chris Eubank Jr. in the queue as well too. I think David Morell is one of those who was ready for that big opportunity, and after this weekend, he's really kind of got to nail one down, really.
Yeah, the problem is, Des, with Morell is he's high risk, low reward. He's a lot of the hardcore boxing fans are definitely tuned into this guy, but he's not bringing a lot of star power to the table. So I'm glad that Turki Al-Sheikh has given him this spotlight.
And I think, I agree, and I think it's a good bit of matchmaking as well. This is, Kalajdzic brings something to the table. He's got much more experience, 3 times as many fights. He can punch himself. He's been in there with the very best in the world. I think this poses questions for that Morell. I think Morell wins it, but I think it's a good bit of matchmaking. And this is the type of matchmaking that we want to see from teams that really believe in their kid. Morell's a talent, and as Ames said, he's waiting for the big one. So in the meantime, have some competitive fights. I think Morell wins it, but I think it's a good fight to make as well.
Why did he move up? Does anyone know?
I think he's chasing Benavidez now.
But this is where, as well, this is where there's a bit of a pitfall here for someone like David Morell, because you're on a card where there's spotlight on someone like an Andrew Ruiz, a former world champion who's looking to climb back, and he's had a big moment. He's been there. There's intrigue with him. Jared Anderson, again, we've said before, intrigue with him as being one of the top contenders coming through who could maybe, for some, rule the heavyweight division for a number of years, capture a few titles, whatever. Same sort of thing with Andy Cruz as well too, who's looked brilliant in his last 2 fights. Same sort of thing with Isaac Cruz, who also is an exciting fighter. Terence Crawford as well, one of the pound greats. You risk, if you don't deliver, if you don't provide that knockout finish, you risk being shuffled under the highlight reel of on the clips and social media. You risk kind of being your spotlight being diminished by other fighters who have provided on big cards like this. You risk being an afterthought. So someone like David Morell might be grateful of this opportunity on this card this weekend and the money that it brings and what could be the good spotlight that it brings. But if you don't capitalize upon that, then you're swallowed up by these other guys who've already got their followings, who've already been there, who are also striving as well too. You can't risk that moment, because then you just get pushed down the pack even further. So for someone like Morell here, he's really got to deliver for me.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact running order on this card. I doubt that one is the co-main, but it is definitely going to be worth seeing how he looks. And he's a major player in those divisions. He's a special talent, got a great eye for shots, but we'll see. But all of that is in support for the main event, which is Terence Crawford, who is going to try to win another title in another weight class, taking on Israel Madrimov. This one, I'm interested in this one a lot. Crawford moving up another weight class. I mean, yeah, he's been on this incredible knockout run. And I've been one of his most vocal supporters. I do think he wins this fight, but I kind of feel like this one is going to go to a decision, Rob. I don't know. Talk me out of it.
No, I hear you. Listen, I always say it. Fellas are not Superman. Like, you can go up the weights, but there's a limit. I think Crawford is that good that, especially with the current crop of 160 fighters, he could probably skip 154 and go straight to 160 and win a title. I think he's that good. I think it's a tragic and crying shame that he was frozen out of the welterweight division and had to make himself a free agent to make the Spence fight. I think he made a mistake re-signing with Arum. And I think that it's leading to the point that Turki Al-Sheikh, with an unlimited budget, things are different. I mean, they always say Bud Crawford is not marketable. Now take a look around at the landscape since the Bud Crawford or Spence fight. This fella had Eminem walk him to the ring. Like, that's like having fucking Taylor Swift or one of the Rolling Stones. Like, one of the biggest ever recording artists is doing your ring walk. Like, Crawford always had crossover appeal. They just never knew how to market him right. And the other promotion, when he didn't sign with him, were afraid of feeding their fighters to him because of what he was going to do to him. He was going to stop the cash cow on each and every one of them because he's that good. But since he's been a free agent, you see the promotion he's getting, like that fucking promo that they did for the Madrimov fight, which Madrimov is not like to the casual. Like, to us, of course, Madrimov is a real threat, a legitimate threat to Terence Crawford. And this is not an easy fight for him, and it's not a shoe-in for him. It's not a guaranteed win for him at all by any stretch. Madrimov's probably the best 154-pounder, but again, that says a lot about Crawford. He's going straight for the guy. The Charlos have fucking cashed themselves out of the fight, so he's and they've played their own part in their own destruction outside the ring, and he's there going to the next best guy. Like, but you see the promo for the Madrimov fight. Like I said, Madrimov is nothing for the casuals, but the promo that they did, like the Raging Bull style promo, you see Crawford now on the fucking WWE knocking fellas out with the chair. He's a badass guy, and he actually has a great fucking personality. If you listen to him talking, like, he's a funny guy, but he's serious. He's serious when it comes to the fights. He's fucking a menacing character, and ability wise, he's probably the best fucking fighter that we've seen in the last 15 years. So
the arguments between him and Floyd, right? It's
yeah, and I think I said this before. This is not recency bias. If you look at the 47-pounders that Floyd faced, Crawford probably beats all of them, and him at both of them at 147. Say if you take him at maybe at lightweight, you would. I don't know. You'd always favor Floyd maybe at 135, but at 47, will Crawford have given Floyd a run for his money? Hell yes, that would have been one of the tightest fights Floyd's ever had to fight, and it doesn't look. Crawford is one of these fighters that when it looks like even that he's in a split second of danger, he always responds tenfold, and that's when he's at his most dangerous. Having said that, I think Madrimov is I can see what you're saying about the knockout streak perhaps coming to an end here, and I think it'll be a decision tight enough. I'm going to go 8 rounds to 4. But Crawford, I just think he's going to be sharper in the counter, southpaw style, more slickness, more. He's worked out European styles before. Might take him a little bit, but I'd say he'll win a decision. He might drop Madrimov along the way.
Yeah, I'm thinking that a knockdown might actually be what is the real puts it away for anybody who thinks it might have been a fight that was up in the air. The one thing that I do say, Ames, that I worry about here is there's a punch that Madrimov throws really, really well and really, really sneakily. And that's the uppercut. And the one time where you could argue that Crawford touched canvas was against Kavalauskas with a little sneaky freaking uppercut that the referee missed. What do you? I don't know. There's this little thing in me that says, I'm already saying decision, so I'm already kind of, going. I wouldn't say I'm going south on the Bud train. I'm still about as big a fan as you can say. But I'm almost thinking that there's a little more danger here than a lot of people are seeing. What are your thoughts? Or is there anything specific that you think Madrimov is bringing to the table, like I believe with that uppercut?
And not really, and specifically on that uppercut, though, that's a real hard punch. So you're talking about a hard punch to land in general, and a real hard punch to land on a fighter who's so experienced in establishing the distance and fighting on his distance and making sure that your opponent doesn't encroach your distance until you're ready to engage or counter off of that. He's a ring general, Terence Crawford. Madrimov's good, and he's still got the foundations of that real kind of amateur Uzbeki kind of style there. What kind of tilts it more so in Crawford's favor for myself, other than, of course, his pound for pound status, his accolades in the ring, counter that with this being a bona fide super welter in the form of Madrimov, is Madrimov's record really kind of has a lot of similarities to Golovkin's record before Golovkin started getting those big pay-per-view fights, those big fight nights. He's kind of been dining on these kind of lower level kind of contenders. I don't know why they've not been able to pull the trigger and maneuver him into positions where he's fighting for world titles a lot more sooner, or unifying divisions a lot more sooner, when he's had Eddie Hearn and Matchroom backing him and being able to kind of, they can lobby for Madrimov to get those opportunities and put him in those positions, and it's never come off for him, especially when you look at the way he beat Kurbanov. He really dispensed of Kurbanov, who Liam Smith, for me, I believe, beat Kurbanov, and there was a BS knockdown not called in that fight.
Wasn't there some fuckery in the first Soro fight too?
I can't remember the fight off the top of my memory, but I think it was there was a technical draw in the second one. I think I was there in Greenwich for that one, but I don't remember the first fight. But anyway, the way he dispensed of Kurbanov, and then Liam Smith will probably be kicking himself that he didn't start a bit sooner, but he was able to beat Kurbanov, who gave Liam Smith still a good fight, even though Liam Smith maybe should have won there. He's beating these type of fighters, but there's never been that big push for him, even though, again, and you take a pinch of salt from Hearn, who will sell his fighters, but he at the start of the decade picked Madrimov to be the takeover fighter of this decade, and that's never really materialized. That might materialize this weekend, but it should have happened before this weekend. And maybe there's something that they know about Madrimov. Maybe they know that he's a real good fighter. He's capable, but when it comes to being an elite level fighter, when it comes to having that little bit extra, he might fall short. And this is where Terence Crawford can seize that opportunity, seize that moment, add a bit more legacy to his already glittering legacy, and capture world titles at a higher weight.
Right, Des, what you get the final word on this fight? It seems like everybody's on the Crawford train. Some a little bit more than others. What do you think? Any surprises in store?
No, I like Madrimov. I think he's a good fighter, and I think there's a career in Madrimov, and he's gonna have a big career, and he's gonna do a lot of things. But I think he's coming across in Terence an all-time great, a generational talent. And if you cast your mind back, people like Ray Leonard, to pick up on what Rob said, Ray Leonard went from welterweight with, say, Benitez and Duran, jumped up to light middle with Kaluli and Hearn, jumped up to middle against Marvin Hagler. I think Floyd did the same thing. Floyd went from sort of fighting the Gattis at whatever weight it was, light welter, I think it was. Then he jumped up to fight Ricky Hatton, then he jumped up to Oscar, then Ricky Hatton. Floyd jumped up weights and fought the best in the division, and that's what great fighters do. Madrimov is the number one guy at light middle. Bud's jumping up and fighting the number one guy. I think he's getting him at the right time as well. I think Bud will know too much, be too good. Doesn't mean Madrimov's not a good fighter. I think Bud's just that good, and I think this is what great fighters do. This is the difference between good fighters, very good fighters, and exceptionally good fighters. And the exceptionally good fighters are a very small number. We see them every 10 years, every 15 years, and they stand out. Bud's that guy. So I expect him to win. I don't think he'll get rid of Madrimov because he's going up another weight. Bud's talking. I watched him do an interview with Andre Ward this week, and he was talking about not taking too many punches, and the art of boxing was about hitting and not being hit, and we're not here to be in wars. So I think there might be a shift in mindset for Bud going up a weight, fighting against the number one guy. But I think for me, Terence wins, beats a good fighter, and wins another version of a world title at a new weight.
That is the plan. That is the plan. We'll see. Yeah, boxing is crazy. Stranger things have definitely happened, but seems to be the hunch. If Bud gets rid of him, I think it's definitely going to be later on in the fight. You might get some value on like a last half or a 10-12 bet maybe.
I'm not getting the vibe though, but that's his mentality now. But there's a bit of a click with the elite Americans at the moment, and they're all jumping up weights and they're all pushing the envelope. And I don't think the directive is let's get rid of this guy. They don't sell like that anymore. I think Bud, I'll be very surprised if he does. Bud will win, but I think he'll do it on point. And I just don't think they've got that mindset anymore, Matty. They're not like the Ray Leonard. Sorry, Rob.
Sorry, there is a danger, I think, that they're overlooking Madrimov maybe because Turkey Al-Sheikh is making statements in the press this week that he's going to make Canelo, as soon as this fight's over, that he's going to make Canelo the offer to fight Crawford.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah, basically, well, he's going to come with a bag, and he said, unless Canelo's demands are ridiculous, I'm going to make any other fight that Bud Crawford wants. So this combination, it's a pity it came kind of 10 years too late for Bud Crawford, because who knows where he could have been. But they have to get this one done first, because if he loses to Madrimov, there's no Canelo fight. And again, I always worry about fellas jumping up so many weight classes. This is his fourth one. I think, like I said, he could probably go to the 60 with the current crop and win a title there. I don't know about the Canelo one, but I'm here for it. You know, that way it's a massive event, massive boxing event, and maybe it's the fight that Crawford deserves as his exodus, because he knows he hasn't got too much. I saw that interview too. He's not talking about staying around forever. Like, he's trying to, you know, solidify his legacy in these last few fights and really get that big payday that some of the other fighters who couldn't carry his jockstrap have gotten. Like, so maybe, you know, I would love him to see him get the Canelo payday before it's all over. I think Benavidez beats Canelo, so I don't think I'd like to see it, but do we want to see Canelo go out like that? Like, I think that the Canelo Crawford fight's more interesting for a number of reasons.
Let me throw on back to you guys, because I guess we're all kind of picking Crawford to win here, but what does this do for Crawford and his legacy if he finds him and his options on the table if he finds himself on the end of a loss to Madrimov this weekend?
I think that that makes the Boots fight likely instead of a Canelo fight.
And I think it really dents his legacy as well, Ames. I think it really does, yeah.
I don't necessarily think it does. Going up 1-2 mini. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you look back at Crawford, I think there's a lot of fights. Now I think if he loses to Madrimov, I don't think we'll put him in that bracket of Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Floyd. I don't think he'll be in that bracket. I think he'll be just underneath it. And then of course you've got the jeopardy if he again goes in with a Boots and gets beat by Boots. I'm not saying he would. I don't think he gets beat by Madrimov, but to answer Amy's question, I think if Bud loses to Canelo, he'll be forgiven for the reasons Matty gives. But I think if he loses to Madrimov, I think his stock will drop. I think his legacy will be dented.
That's interesting. I feel like if he fought Canelo, even if he lost that fight, it wouldn't matter. Like the only thing that could happen with that fight is his legacy. It gets even better. There's really no downside. He's going to get paid a lot of money, and he might end up, an absolute legend at that point in time. But anyways, I would like to thank you guys. Unfortunately, my assistant on the Belly of the Week, Jay, had some tech issues, and all the Belly of the Week nominations got lost. So that sucks, but he does a lot of work, and I'm not going to hold it against him. He's a great guy. Hopefully we'll get back into the groove with that again. I'd like to acknowledge the people in the chat. Number one, Beat Bob.
Was it Jay? Sorry.
Jay, yes. It was
Did
Jay.
he give it to Silent Bob?
Possibly. We do, man. He needs to find a friend named Bob. Jay, when you're listening to this, make sure you find a friend named Bob. The stories write themselves. I'd like to give a
Silent Rob, no Belly of the Week.
I was about to say Silent Rob.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, we can't let it just slide though with the GWOAT winning the fucking women's heavyweight title and not mention give her some kind of fucking Belly of the Week acknowledgement. What the fuck is going on? I didn't even know this fight was made. I look on, she's beating up some old woman that works in the skipper.
Yeah.
And now she's fucking the Roy Jones of fucking female. She's literally the GWOAT. Like, she's got up to heavyweight. What is heavyweight in women's boxing?
175. That's as high as some of the organizations will acknowledge.
Well, best of luck to her. We wish her well.
We do wish her the best. I'd like to wish the best to all the people in the chat here, including Dex 2024, who, get this, thinks that Terence Crawford is the only elite level American boxer. I said Jesse Rodriguez, but no, he said top world level, but not elite level. So Jesse Rodriguez, if you're listening, apparently Dex 2024 says you are not elite level. Dale Baker was also in there briefly today. We have Welchmeers, Michael Thompson in there, MB, Johnny, Liz McDonald Boxing is in there. Also, I think there was a Steve McDonald Boxing, maybe Jim McDonald Boxing, Arlene Burley, John Trounson. Let's see here. I think there's, as we scroll up, there might have been a few more in there. Maybe not. Oh, I think earlier at least. Let's see. Got to be a couple more. There's our friend Bebop Boop, of course, who we already thanked. Man, Iron Fisted Champion in there. Let's see here. And I'm sure I could find one more before we go. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if I can't? Ha 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 ha. Let's see. Take Ames. Ha! You were in the chat, and you're also on the panel. I'll take that. Oh, Harvey Price Boxing returns right below you. Ha! I win double. So I'd like to thank our good friend Eamon Khan, who was with Seconds Out. Make sure to check out their work there. Also, Dez and Rob Kelly. I've been your host, Matt DiGianno. Remember, next week we're going to be back here to review all of this great action coming from this card in Los Angeles. It's all part of Riyadh season. We're here for the fun, and I hope that everybody is enjoying it. Until next week, I've been your host, Matt DiGianno. Be sure to be kind to each other. We need less dickheads in the world. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
We'll never forget.
I think that's good.
Go to animals!
We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch. I've never met a fucking swank that can fight me.
I fell asleep. You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Grumpo fucking Steltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7-year ain't. I
will fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love boxing silence, as simple as that.